Joining us this morning. Happy Friday. We hope that you have had a lovely Thursday and that you're going to have a lovely Friday as well. Today, we'll be looking at 1 year of COVID-19 in the country. What has happened? The efforts and the measures the government took before this day and after this day. The measures that the citizens took before this day and after this day. And then we look at the situation in the country as we stand and where we are. And then we'll also be talking about the people who have tested positive for COVID, those that have recovered from COVID, those that are still battling COVID, and those that unfortunately passed away from COVID. That is going to be the focus of the show today. We'll be joined by one survivor of COVID-19 in the studio at about 8 o'clock. He'll come and give us his experience. We'll also have a conversation with government spokesman, Colonel Cyrus Aguna, who will come and tell us what the government is doing and what has been happening throughout the year, what the plans are going forward. And we will be having, in the middle of all that, there's the issue of Kenyans importing maize from our neighboring countries, Uganda and Tanzania. Are we allowed to? Are we not? Are traders playing games here or are they not? So we'll have somebody to come and give us that conversation. Yes?
Yes.
Now, let me say hello to you.
Oh, that had not happened.
No.
Okay.
I was saving the best for last.
Voila. You're a very good man.
Good
morning.
morning,
You know the right things to say at the right time. Good morning, Eric.
How
Latif.
are you?
I am fine, thank you.
Really? Yeah, you look fine.
Why, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine.
I'm happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you too. Happy to be seen by you.
Voila.
Yes. Our colleague Siti Muga will be back next week, God willing. He's okay. He's just away.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yet away.
Yes. He's all right. He's very much all right. In fact, he listens to the show. Feet up, pina colada in hand, and enjoying himself. Just
Castle in the
sending us
sky.
messages. What did you just say? The man. Okay. So COVID. A new batch of vaccines arrived in the country. Yes. A new batch arrived yesterday from India.
How many?
A couple hundred.
Hold on a minute.
Couple millions. Millions. Couple hundred thousands.
Couple 100,000. Okay.
Yep. Arrived in the country yesterday from India aboard Air India. Landed at JKIA in the late afternoon. Yeah, so we are doing well in terms of securing COVID vaccine.
It is true.
Vaccination around the country is also taking place very, very, very well. We know that now teachers and security personnel have also started receiving the jab, in addition to the ongoing healthcare workers who have also been receiving the jabs.
It is true. So, I mean, like you had said earlier, if we're looking at the numbers of cases of COVID in the country, Kenya, with 111,185 cases of COVID, 1 year after the first case was announced on March 13th, 2020. Kenya has reached 111,185. Kenya, unfortunately, has also seen 1,899 deaths. Over that 1 year span, these are the numbers that we have been looking at. Let's look at yesterday. We knew that we would get to these numbers. Yesterday, 829 new cases were reported with one new death. We also saw stories, reports of a few cases being found in schools, different pockets around the country. We've also seen that some schools now will close a week earlier because of fears of COVID-19, even while the class 4s, the grade 4s and the class 8s and the form 4s get ready for their exams. There are also stories of some schools with students in isolation. In isolation, will still do the exams while in isolation. So even if they're isolated, the exams will continue for them to be able to finish. Because by March 19th, schools will close as they prepare for the exams. Now, the KCPE and KCSE exams that will take place, they're saying that regardless of what is happening now, this will still go on, which I think is a good thing. Let the exams go on, let them finish. We don't need another delay or another rescheduling. This just needs to happen and be finished with. It is our hope that we don't get more and more cases of COVID. It's a good thing that schools close in the next 7 days and children go home. And those who remain in school for exams do so under the strictest measures and make sure that they do the exams and then also are able to be released to go home. So if anything, this is a time to up everything, up the measures, make sure that we are sanitizing properly, keeping kids who have to remain in possibly infected areas as safe as possible. So I think it needs to be done, but then it needs to be done under the strictest conditions. All right. So we're still seeing areas around the country where people are still isolated. The prisons, again, a big deal here. We're looking now. Tuesday, we had 2,000 inmates across the country that were isolated. That number now has gone to 2,600. Again, across the country, from Meru to Nairobi to Kiambu County to Mombasa County, Migori, Siaya, around the country, and we're looking at that situation, if not handled, probably something that could get pretty bad. Again, Eric, I mean, I see that in the next week, we will see cases rise to 1,000 per day.
Yeah.
In as much as we keep saying until it's almost like we're blue in the face that we expected this to happen at this time, still the calls are rife to be as careful as possible. For each and every one of us, whether the communication comes out clearly in terms of what the government will do. Today is the day that President Uhuru Kenyatta will announce what is going to happen in terms of measures. I don't see the curfew being lifted, number one. I see probably a little bit of tightening here and there.
Tightening of what?
I don't know. That's the thing. I was just about to say, I don't know what it will be. But
Close
I
bars
don't think it's
again.
going to leave it at just curfew continues for another 3 months.
Close bars again.
I don't see it as just curfew 11 to 4 p.m. for another 3 months. I see something else. I don't know.
In addition?
Yeah. But I guess by 4 o'clock today we shall know, no?
We'll know.
Yes. We will know what that will be. All right. So let's look at what's happening with COVID around the world. Denmark has stopped the AstraZeneca vaccination over blood clots. All right. This is a big story around the world. The European country is one of 8 that have put on hold the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine over concerns related to blood clots in some recipients. The concerns first came up after a recipient in Austria was diagnosed with blood clots and then died 10 days after vaccination. So they did not say how many reports of blood clots there have been. Austria had also stopped using their batch while investigating this particular death. Both the Austrians and the Danish medicines agencies had to respond to reports of possible serious side effects, both from Denmark and other European countries, according to the Director of Danish Health. That was Søren Brostrøm. They're currently not in a position to conclude whether there is a link. They're acting early and it needs to be thoroughly investigated before they're actually able to say anything conclusively. But what they have been able to do right now is say, look, because we've seen this one case, stop everything. And then as we're doing our investigations, we'll then be able to know exactly what the issue is. AstraZeneca themselves yesterday told the Reuters news agency that the vaccine had been extremely studied in human trials, and peer-reviewed data had confirmed the vaccine was generally well tolerated. So they did not expect anything like this. So they themselves are just as surprised as everybody else.
The reports, right?
Yes, they are. So the European Union's drug regulator said Wednesday that there was no evidence so far linking AstraZeneca to the 2 cases in Austria. It said that the number of so what this was the deep pulmonary embolism that this individual suffered from. So this events that led to the formation of blood clots in people that have received the vaccine is no higher than that seen in the general population, with 22 cases of such events being reported among 3 million people who had received it as of the 9th of March. So everybody, I think right now, is still up in the air. Is there a direct relation between the blood clots that they're seeing in these individuals who have had the vaccine and the rest of the population who have had issues of blood clots? Is there a direct link then between the vaccine, blood clots, or is there something that's underlying in all of these individuals who've had these blood clots and that could have come about whether they had the vaccine or not? So,
but they've also not said how many people.
So there's 2 for sure in Austria, 1 in Denmark. They say other European countries. The other European countries have not been named. All right, but these are the 2 that have come out very clearly and said, for now, the vaccine, this particular batch,
let's suspend
it for now.
A couple of days. Okay. Elsewhere, the UK and
as we're looking at what's going on in the UK and other parts of the world, we also know that certain countries in Africa, I think then starting with the leadership of South Africa and possibly Egypt, looking at the formation of Africa's own COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes.
But we'll look at details of that. All right.
So basically manufacture it locally.
Yes.
Because there's no manufacturing of any vaccine that's happening in Africa. There is manufacturing in India, there's manufacturing in Europe and in America, but... So we are importing everything across borders.
Yes.
Making it more expensive because there is transport cost and all.
I mean, we saw yesterday Kenya's asking for 5 billion shillings to be able to fund this vaccine drive in the country.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can imagine something that was locally manufactured would have a cheaper price tag.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Biden has a COVID bill. President of the U.S., Joe Biden, has a bill, and he basically is looking at what he's calling the COVID relief bill, and it's dubbed the American Rescue Plan Act. It's to be signed today, and not only provide direct payments to Americans, but it will allocate billions of dollars to COVID research, testing, and vaccine distribution. But it will also greatly expand the welfare of families and children. So will it be something that will need a lot of money? Absolutely. But he also sees it as something that is necessary, right? He's looking at spending $3.5 trillion on this. But he understands that, look, if he's able to buffer and protect Americans, then they'll be able to do 2 things at the same time. Fight COVID in terms of the research, in terms of what is needed to treat at the moment, and also vaccines for protection for the future. But at the same time, if he comes out and tells Americans, we need you to social distance and stay at home, then you're putting money in their pocket. Right now, what they're looking at is $1,400 is that they're paying out to Americans on a monthly basis. And asking them, if we're saying, those of you who are not able to work, don't go out and look for active work, stay at home,
and
then
you
we
get
also are putting something
$1,400 every month.
Exactly, and we're putting that in your pocket. He's looking at
how much did Trump want to increase it to? It was 2,000.
It was 2,000, yes.
And they fought it down, so they're going to do 1,400.
Yes.
Okay.
Too expensive, so now not too expensive, right?
Okay.
So what's in this $1.9 trillion stimulus plan? Quite some. So it's support, welfare for people, putting money in your pocket on a daily basis. Also being able to say, stay at home, folks, while we as a super PAC fight this thing. But let's make sure that you have food and the wherewithal that you need to take care of your families. So if this bill passes, it'll be a landmark one. And it's on its way. If it's signed in today, then it will be something that will help Americans. It would be great if, it would be great to look at the details of how exactly this would be done.
And what else it contains. Because, yes, there's the Trump administration came up with this stimulus package immediately in the early days of COVID. And there was the money that was sent out to people, and it was now to increase that amount. That's where the conversation was just before the elections. And there was all this pushback and people saying, no, why? And always the question in my mind was, so are you just saying no because you don't want to give Trump a win, or are you saying no because people don't need extra support?
Oh, it's clear that people need the extra support. So and I think now things now come out and it's open. It's clear to people what it was at that time. Saying no to stick it to the guy, but in this case, you see it's clear that people need
People still needed it. 16 minutes after 6, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. The live stream is up, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Say hello to us. Let's see who's online. And wherever you're tuned in, we'd love to know that you're online. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
The realest and craziest couple are now on your screens. Terrence and Chebi are bringing you top celebrities and trendsetters on Thursday Night Live. It's double the fun and double the laughter every Thursday at 10 p.m. on KTN Home.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Yeah! You're listening to Spice FM.
Japan, biotechnology, yes! Hey, Samuel, are you into business now? What are you importing from Japan? Knowledge! I'm going to study biotechnology in the best university in Japan. I applied and ta-da! Japan? Yes! You will have to first learn Japanese. No, my friend. They have more than 850 courses that are provided in English and very affordable. Hey, how do I apply? Kuja Osome Japan. Study in Japan Global Network Project brings you an opportunity to study in Japan. Log on to www.studyinjapan-africa.com and apply to study in Japan with over 100 universities providing cutting-edge science and technology courses including the field of robotics, artificial intelligence, AI, environmental studies, information technology, and many more. Not only postgraduate but undergraduate level is also covered.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice
All right,
FM.
so let's look at what the skies look like this morning. In Nairobi, we'll look at clear conditions for now. 16 degrees. It's going to go to a high of 28 today and partly sunny conditions throughout today. Nyeri at 13 degrees is mostly clear. Highs of 26 and lows of 13. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nakuru at 14, highs of 30 and lows of 13. 13 will also be the low in Eldoret, where it's clear at 15. 20 degrees and clear in Kisumu, highs of 32 and lows of 20. It's clear in Kakamega at 18, highs of 33 and lows of 15. We'll see lows of 25, mostly clear conditions in Mombasa today, going to highs of 32. 31 the high in Malindi, partly cloudy conditions at 26. 21 and clear in Kampala, highs of 31 and lows of 18. It's mostly clear in Dar es Salaam, highs of 33, lows of 25. And Johannesburg is mostly cloudy at 16, highs of 27 and lows of 15. 32 the high in Lagos, it's mostly clear this morning. There's a chance of rain for earlier this Friday. It's 24 degrees and partly cloudy in Kinshasa. It'll go to highs of 32 and lows of 24. It's raining in Beijing this morning at 9, highs of 12 and lows of 6. Mostly clear conditions in Paris at 6, highs of 12 and lows of 8. And clear conditions in London at 6, highs of 10 and lows of 6. Looking at New York, it's 13 degrees, quite warm on Thursday night. Looking at highs of 20 in New York. Pretty warm for a New York day. We'll see what it looks like getting into Friday morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
This is
Nairobi.
Kenya's biggest conversation. Who is online?
Okay, so Waterman Jeffrey says, good morning. $1,400 is to every single American making below 75K a year, and the bill just passed. This is what will be given to Americans. And Biden making many Americans very happy, it would appear. Isaac Kebwaro is tuned in from Minneapolis, and he says he can hear us loud and clear. Robert Bogo says, it's a happy Friday. Spicing up Mombasa, Asante Sana. Washera Wilfred, Geshogo is bright this morning, brightened even more by the room. By the way, where is CT? CT is hovering in the atmosphere. He's here, you just can't see him. Ali Aweso, Nico locked in from Athi River, CIPU camp. Good morning, good morning. Rogers Lai, tuned in from County 001. And Beda Ashley this morning is tuned in from Machakos. So everybody is getting into the room this morning bright and early, and we say good morning and happy Friday,
everybody. Today's proverb, this one is a Kenyan proverb. And just like we've learned from CT, we have to make it gender neutral. When one is stung, he does not... Oh, I said one. Gender. They don't destroy all beehives.
I say, start again.
When one is stung, they do not destroy all beehives.
Just the one from where the person stung you.
Let's destroy one.
Just destroy one. Not all bees sting.
When you are stung, you don't destroy all beehives. It's a Kenyan proverb. Let's look at the headlines.
Okay, so I guess the big one that we can't ignore, Raila tests positive for COVID-19, carried across major papers today. Looking at the Standard, upbeat mood. On his third day in hospital, the ODM party leader discloses that even though tests have shown he has contracted the virus, he feels strong and in good shape and will be undergoing the mandatory quarantine. So even when they're not quite sure what it is that he was suffering from, now it is clear.
Says test came out positive
yes.
and that he has tested positive for the coronavirus.
Yes, his doctor, David Olunya, confirmed that the ODM leader was suffering from the virus. He had taken ill Tuesday evening, complaining of fatigue. But now, following this letter, it's clear that he's responding well and that he remains upbeat. And so Raila himself came out and said that what he will do is follow the necessary protocols. And then he did come out and tell people that, you know, just in case you were doubting, COVID-19 is real.
Yeah.
And I'm asking everybody to be extremely careful. My concern then after this is that the people who've been around him for at least the last 14 days, are they also isolating? Have they also gone to check if they may have also contracted COVID?
Contact tracing. Basically, if you're a responsible person and you hear that somebody that you've come into close contact with in the last 7 days or 10 days has tested positive, you don't need to be told. Just isolate. We are seeing pictures of, the kind of rallies that on Friday last week, the Honorable Raila Odinga was in Kinango, Kwale County. They were talking about BBI and, of course, everything else. The people who are standing next to him, several leaders from the region, we expect that they have been contacted either directly by people who are handling Raila, and they've been told, okay, guys, isolate. It shouldn't even be a conversation about, oh, are you isolating? Are you not?
It shouldn't be that we're asking. It should be an almost immediate reaction.
Yeah, for your own good.
Yeah, for your own good.
Isolate. If you develop symptoms, go get tested and then treated. But here's the thing. If you look at, this is the highest profile personality in the country who has tested positive and announced it publicly and said, I have tested positive. I see a positive thing here. That he decided to announce it. Not keep it secret, not play around at the under wraps. Oh, he's okay. No, it was just fatigue. He's an old man. He had gone for an operation last year. It was a very grueling. No, just come out and say he himself actually released that statement and said, and I've also allowed my doctor to let you know that I have tested positive. It's a good thing. It's a good thing because he says, I'm not hiding anything. I am here. I'm undergoing treatment. I've been told to isolate. I'm feeling okay for now. And this is what I'm going through. Yeah. I think that's a positive thing.
I think so. Absolutely. And even from the communication that we're talking about first, I think hiding and keeping this under wraps is actually what promotes the stigma.
Yes.
When you hide it and don't want anybody to... No, it's something you protect yourself, number one. You protect the people around you. And then you also allow people to do things that would be absolutely necessary when it came to protecting themselves and their families and people that they work with or come into contact with. So absolutely, there's no shame in this at all. And I think at every opportunity, then it can be shared that, you have it, you let people know that you do, so that you're protecting them and you're also protecting yourself.
Yep, necessary. That's true. The other thing that now comes out as well is if you look at the picture of this rally in Kinango on Friday, right? You can see Raila himself is not wearing a face mask, not anywhere, not on his chin, not on his forehead, nothing at all. Then you can see the leaders who are next to him, apart from just one who is wearing the face mask correctly, others are not wearing face masks at all. So this, including people like Agnes Zani, who's also not even holding a face mask. This tells you something. That it's about time that people actually started also taking this thing seriously. Because if a leader of a stature of Raila was not wearing a face mask at such a public rally and then he has contracted COVID-19 and it's few days after being in such a rally, tells you the kind of exposure that he was putting himself into.
Sure, chances are high that quite a number of people in that area could have had it at that time.
Yep. And so it's important, a message here that also goes to the other political leaders as well who've been doing this. Just because you're standing on top of a vehicle doesn't mean that you are not exposing yourself. And everybody who is not in that vehicle with you, who is basically milling around the vehicle in a huge crowd, is standing at risk of contracting the virus. So I think the message that should come from the president today is no rally, not just rally, no address.
No thing.
No address, not to 5 people, not to 10 people, just forget it. This thing of going at it was an impromptu. I was just going to Meru to visit. I was just going to Meru to visit. I was going for a church service, and then people came out in their thousands to sing Ruto ni Simba, ni mtoto wa Simba.
No.
That's not the point. Do not allow them to sing Ruto ni mtoto wa Simba. Kama ni mtoto wa Simba, go home. Go home. Let them send you messages saying that. Same thing with President Uhuru Kenyatta. You're going to open a new clinic. Don't.
Yeah, it's okay, don't.
Just go, cut the ribbon with a few officials, drive off, make a public announcement. We will watch you on Facebook. And we'll see that you've opened this facility.
Yes, and then through those same channels, you will now encourage people that they can use it. Period. It doesn't need this.
Yes, we don't need to see this kind of public gathering. So it's going to be interesting to see what the president says today.
Quite.
And this coming hot on the heels also of what the Council of Governors was urging the health CS and the chair of the Emergency Response Committee to advise the president, please tell the president to outlaw political rallies. This is a strong message as well, coming from this positive test confirmation of Raila Odinga, that now it's about time that we actually took this seriously.
Yep.
And did something more about it. So let's take a break and then look at more headlines. It's 29 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We're live on SpiceFM. Wherever you are in the country, we are broadcasting. And then we're also live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. We'll be looking at more headlines shortly. Good morning.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
use a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Afande hii umbo yako iko na pembe.
Hii ni umba special.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Or are we looking at any kind of crazy traffic today? Well, it looks like coming out of Roysambo, vehicles have decided to greet each other in a way that we don't like. Caused an accident there this morning. So complaints about that. Coming off of Thika Road, it's slow. There have been an accident higher up the road today, but we'll have to get details of that and see what it looks like in a short bit. Coming off Mombasa Road, it is the normal traffic that we see, already bumper to bumper in some areas. Jogo Road this morning is also tight as you get towards the roundabout at the City Stadium onto Landis Road. Then bumper to bumper situation on Gong Road headed towards town. It's also looking pretty slow this morning as you get off of Langata Road. We'll have to see how that opens up in a bit. Coming round to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout out then towards Hulu Highway. We'll look at that in about half an hour or so. Are you in Mombasa? Are you getting on the ferry? Do you have cash? Put it in M-Pesa so that you can board the ferry. Ntongwe and Likoni, by the way. That's what they will accept. Let's talk in a bit and see what it looks like in your neck of the woods. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, it's 28
right.
minutes to
94.
7 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. So the headlines, other headlines in the paper. There's a law that has been proposed by MP from Homa Bay Town, Opondo Kaluma. So, let me just tell you what the law says.
Okay.
Secret lovers and their children will soon be locked out of inheritance if their married partners die. If Parliament passes the Law of Succession Amendment Bill 2020, the inheritance will be limited to only men and women who are legally married, their children and extended family. The bill is sponsored by Peter Kaluma of Homa Bay Town, and it seeks to amend Section 3 to read that a spouse means a husband or wife or wives recognized under the Marriage Act. The Marriage Act recognizes 3 types of marriages. 1 is religious marriage. 2 is traditional marriage. 3 is civil marriage. Only cohabitation, getting babies together, is not married. Okay? According to the bill, a wife is a woman who has separated from her husband, a spouse, or a widow. The bill also caters for widowed men. The spouse for inheritance must be the spouse as defined in the Marriage Act, not a mere friend that we currently have.
This thing is rife. People die and then people show up with children and say, actually, you know what? This, we had been together for a very long period of time and I knew that he had a wife, but here I am. It happens all the time.
But
what?
At the same time, yes, I'm sure we'll have conversations about what other law recognizes children. Okay? Is a child entitled to inheritance from their parent?
By virtue of the fact that the father,
yes,
and so the father has a responsibility.
The father has a
naturally and by law to take care of that child.
Yes,
the child.
Yes. So if a child, for example, is entitled to something, is entitled to support from a parent, dead or alive, does it end at 18? Does the law say that, are we now saying that this child, if the child has been recognized by law, that this is your baby, and therefore needs support as they are a child until 18, so does it mean that they cannot inherit from you?
This will have the support that we're talking about, then also have to ask yourself then, when does childhood come to an end? And is that support for the duration of childhood? What happens after that?
Yeah.
Because there's some very grey lines here that things like inheritance are usually what people come out of the woodwork for.
Yeah.
That when it's not about support, because it's about, okay.
It's also support. In some cases, you'll find
after this person has died,
yes,
they're also looking to get a piece of the pie.
They're looking to have continuity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because this person has probably been supporting them. That's why they've never really raised an issue.
Exactly.
When he was alive, he was taking care of this family. Okay? Hidden, secret or not, he was taking care of us. Now that he's gone, that support needs to be recognized and needs to continue. And this is what Kaluma is basically fighting and saying, pana.
If it was secret while he was alive, let it continue being secret.
No.
It would have been brought out. It would have been brought out when the person was alive. Bring it out into the open and let people know what's going on. If we're going to be 4, let's be 4 while we're all knowing. But then we know that we are 2, and then when this person passes on, 3, 4 other people come out of the woodwork, and then we have to also share the inheritance, which the law has said it's for 2 of us. Now, therefore, suddenly, no.
But also, in some cases, someone is not aware that it's secret.
Who is someone?
The mother of this child.
Oh, the secret woman is not
Yes,
is not
the
aware
secret woman
that
is not aware
her
that-
relationship is actually secret.
Yep.
She thinks everybody knows who she is.
It's the man who has kept the other side, the other family secret.
And she would have liked to come out into the open and say, actually,
As
here
far as
I
she was
am,
concerned,
guys.
her friends knew this guy. Her family knew this person. As far as she was concerned, they had actually something going on.
Then they should have made it formal, made it legal.
They were
You
going
talked
to-
about the three. You talked about the three.
They were heading to that journey.
You talked about the three instances where it's recognized by the
Yes.
country and by law. Traditionally, civil marriage, and then what's the other one? Religious marriage,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Those are the three that are recognized. So if you're saying that this thing was clear that everybody knew about it, then it should have been made formal in one of the three of those
And by the way, there are
circumstances.
such cases happen.
You have a child
where you
who's
see
10
even
years
going
old.
in court.
You have a
and
10-year-old
they
child.
say,
Mm.
this person even came to my parents.
Yes, they
And we
have a-
started a conversation.
Mhm.
So the traditional journey, the traditional marriage journey has already begun. This person has been coming home. My folks know this person. As far as I was concerned, all along I knew that we are getting towards this journey of
But it never
formalizing
happened. And then
this.
you have a child who is 10 years old.
Yep.
10 years, you didn't formalize this thing.
Yes.
No. But you did with the other side. So the other side that for which you did is what should be recognized.
No. I think children need to be taken care of,
Oh, I agree 100%. But in most cases,
which includes inheritance.
for the child.
Yes.
For the child. In most cases, a lot of these women come out and are looking for also to be part of the.
Yes, for their
part of the
children.
share. They should be custodians.
They come out.
They should be
They come out seeking inheritance for their children. Women who do not have children do not come out of the woodwork.
Sometimes they do. Saying that
Without
I was
a
his
child-
wife, he came to my home.
Without
the
a
same thing
child,
you're
they
saying
don't
now.
have much.
The same thing you're saying now that he came to see my parents. We were on the way. As far as I was
They have no
concerned, I was
proof.
going to be the third
You know,
wife.
a baby is a living
baby
proof.
is proof.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what this law, if it comes, if as far as it will go, if it's
Yeah.
discussed and brought into. There will be many proponents for this bill.
But also, no, I'm hearing what the bill is trying to do, but I'm also pointing to some issues. For example, there was a man who went to court claiming that he was Njenga Karume's son. Man himself is not 12 or 13 or 20
The grown
or
man.
30. He's
Right.
actually, I think, 45 or something. But that person is seeking inheritance. This law is trying to lock him out. And I think he shouldn't.
No, I don't think it should lock out children.
It shouldn't. It should say basically that it's because it's saying the spouse and their children, recognized spouse and their children.
The children are the innocent ones in all of this, and I think that children ought to be recognized at least for that support and inheritance.
Yeah.
Because at the time that this individual was going around sowing his royal oats, the children come out as an innocent part to play in all of this, whereas the two would have been consenting adults and all of this happening. The fruit of their labor, this child,
Yeah.
needs to be cared for. That I agree. That I agree.
Kabisa. There's another sad story on that page 4, just before you look at the other headline. A man's mission to reclaim his estranged wife, who had fled their matrimonial home, turned tragic after he was lynched at his in-laws' homestead. So this is what happened. The man is called George Cheboy. Cheboy was married to a woman, and they had an altercation. The woman had gone back home to her folks. Cheboy gathers a number of men, and then they go to the in-laws' house, and they are saying, all right, we have come to get my wife back. And the way they approach, the in-laws raise alarm. Neighbors hear the alarm, and they come, and they think, these people have been attacked. So now there's a scuffle between these men who have come to get their wife and the neighbors. And Cheboy is beaten to death. Another man is beaten, such a serious condition, he's at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital.
My goodness.
These stories are just,
I mean,
they just
keep
every day
popping
there
out.
will
There's
be a
another
story.
one, another one.
This is a man who died. Did he have to die? This is another man who's fighting for his life. Does he have to be where he is right now?
And the woman that they went to get is?
The woman I went to get is safe. She's okay.
did not need to happen.
Yes.
It's something that could have been sorted out over a conversation
Of
the way you
course.
and I are discussing right now.
Of
And that's the
course.
thing. I don't know why dialogue has been tossed out the window and these other options have been taken to. Because ask yourself now, with this, what was solved?
Nothing much, by the
If
way.
anything, the situation was
It's a case. The
exacerbated.
police are now looking for people who participated in this lynch mob.
Do you see now?
The way the story is reported, it appears like Cheboy gathered these men and they were coming to forcefully grab the woman and take her back home. Maybe it's a reporting issue. Maybe they were actually coming, Cheboy and these other men were coming to have a conversation and say, here we are, I have brought myself, my wife has come back home, let's have this conversation so
Yeah.
we can go home.
Could be.
The in-laws decide this is hostile. The in-laws decide that they are going to raise alarm. And when they raise alarm, the neighbors come. Neighbors must know that our neighbor's daughter had left. She's been married. I mean, this is in shags. By the time even the neighbors are deciding that, okay, this is going to get physical, something has really gone wrong.
Something has gone wrong.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Really, really unfortunate.
It's very sad.
So, the government of Dar es Salaam is not very happy, in Tanzania. Tanzanian government officials are seeking to control information on the whereabouts of head of state. Dar issues threats over rumors on Magufuli. State officials in Tanzania have taken to social media to defend the continued absence of their head of state from the public, even as silence from the president's official communication channels persists. Today marks nearly 2 weeks since President John Magufuli was last seen in public. Rumors within and outside Tanzania continue to spread about the whereabouts of Magufuli. Yesterday, Tanzania's cabinet minister for constitutional affairs, Mwigulu Nchemba, countered allegations by the country's leading opposition figure, Tundu Lissu, over the head of state's whereabouts. And I quote, "The president of a country is not a church worker, neither is he a church elder who did not show up for a scheduled appearance. The president is not a TV presenter who had a show and failed to show up. A head of state is not a head of a jogging club who would always be seen around taking selfies." He posted this on his social media platforms.
Chamba is always very active on social media.
Right.
But now, what is it saying?
He said, let's stop the stupidity.
That the president,
The
is not
president can do what he wants, basically. If he's not around, it doesn't mean that there's something going on, and you don't need to know everything. So he's not around. So stop all this speculation.
He's a private man.
We are saying that if you continue in this manner, there could be consequences. The government is at work, and we know we will know where to find you. All right? That's basically what he's saying. So stop it. Stop this speculation. Just stop it.
Basically, they're gagging people from asking anything. Where's our president?
Don't
Instead of
ask.
him coming to say, the president is fine, he's at home, he's working from home, and he does not need to appear for you to know that he's working. He's coming to say the president is not a church-led elder, the president is not a what else is a TV presenter.
He's not a head of a joggers club.
He's not a head of a joggers club. Hey.
So, just stop it. This is the president of a country.
Mupatie heshima zake.
Exactly. Doesn't need to explain to you.
He doesn't need to explain himself.
Everywhere he goes or whatever he's involved in. Just know the president is working.
Period. The government of Tanzania needs basically to address this. Of course, they can see what's happening. There's a lot of information that's spreading left, right, and center, being led by the opposition leader Tundu Lissu, who is in his safe haven of where is he? Belgium?
In Brussels, yes.
Where he's just tweeting and asking questions. So where is the president? I hear the president. He's not saying that he knows anything.
No, I've been told from reliable sources.
I've been told
from reliable sources that he's here and here. Hey.
So this Mwigulu Nchemba should have come out and said, ignore everything else you're hearing. The president is okay. The president is here, or the president has akonmafua kidogo.
Traveled. He's in his
kidogo.
house. He's under the weather a little bit. Something.
Yeah.
But now, you do this. No.
You're not helping anything.
You're not helping anything.
You're
making
gagging the
everybody
people
now
of Tanzania. The people of
suspect.
Tanzania will not tweet or send messages on WhatsApp because they're fearing the crackdown. But the rest of us, we will keep looking for the president of our neighboring country.
We are concerned.
In the spirit of good neighborliness.
Right. And brotherhood of the community.
Brotherhood of the community. The European tour, in that same spirit of good neighborliness and brotherhood of community, has decided to honor Kenya's golfing community with a historic double-header in the form of 2 back-to-back international golf tournaments on Kenyan soil. The golfing bonanza will kick off with the magical Kenya Open from Thursday, the 18th of March next week to Sunday, the 21st of March. Followed soon after by the Kenya Savannah Classic, the latest addition to the European Tour, which takes place from Tuesday, the 23rd to Friday, the 26th. Both tournaments will be held at the current country club and will each boast a handsome prize purse of €1 million. Now, here's the thing. Because of COVID-19 and because of COVID-19 restrictions, this 2020 Magical Kenya Open and the next one, the Kenya Savannah Classic, will not have spectators allowed onto the Kenya Country Club. So you should be able to watch this on TV, and that's why the Standard Group has decided that you're going to be beaming this game live, or this tournament live, on KTN Home and KTN News, and also live streaming the tournament on Standard Digital. Both events are supported by Safaricom, Wilken Wireless, Copycat, the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, Current Country Club, Johnny Walker, Keringet, and Hemingways.
Okay.
So, next week, Thursday, KTN Home, KTN Golf. And it's a Magical Kenya Open.
Super.
And then, after that, the following week on Tuesday, the Savannah. It happens. It's 12 minutes to 7. Let's take a break.
Tengisa kidole, tengisa kidole, agano kidole, agano kidole, agano. Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
11 minutes to 7.
Okay, so a ghost, like Casper, in a wig, who tried to defile girls. The trial of a man who wore a wig and women's clothes and then broke into Mwani Girls High School dormitory resumed yesterday at Makweni Law Court. Jackson Kelly Mutuku, 29, who lives next to the school in Watertown, Makweni County, is alleged to have attempted to sexually assault the students on October 19th, 2020, when the government opened schools for candidates to resume learning. The learners were away for some months when the schools were closed due to COVID-19. Mutuku pled not guilty to all the counts, and the court released him on a 200,000 shilling bond. He could not raise the money and was taken to Makweni GK Remand Prison. 9 witnesses who have so far testified told the court how the man on several occasions tried in vain to defile students. I mean, really. Among the 9 were 3 students, the school's principal and school employees. 3 witnesses, all police officers testified against Mutuku on Wednesday. The case was heard in the chamber since it involves minors. The court was told how the man scaled 2 walls that surrounded the girls' dormitory using a ladder. He then jumped over the first iron sheet wall and made a hole through the second chain link fence and entered the girls' dormitory through a window. I mean, what kind of resolve is that? As in, I've got to get in here.
So how was he arrested?
The girls had complained of a ghost in a wig and ladies' tracksuit that attempted to sexually assault them at night. How he was arrested, this story doesn't give us the details. I'm going to assume that this is a follow-up story to one that would have been reported earlier.
Yeah, so
but
he's
somehow
in court
they
now.
knew who. Yeah, he's in court now.
So girls saw the ghost.
Yeah.
Of course, girls raised the alarm, and maybe that's how he was caught.
Sure, but it's not. He didn't. The thing is, he didn't do this once. He didn't try to get in only once. He tried several times, scaling this fence, trying to get in one time, tries again the next day or a few days after that. Kept trying to get in using this same outfit. Doesn't succeed one night. Tries again. I mean, for crying out loud.
Surely. Okay. Now, Nairobi MCAs have raided the budget
Oh no. The little
so they
budget
can
that
get
there's
money
left.
for new offices and to buy vehicles.
There's no money.
So what they've done is, in a supplementary budget, they have approved a 37.9 billion shillings supplementary. 37.9 billion shillings supplementary budget. Huh? Hey.
Where is it?
Hey. Maybe million.
Where is it? The
Page 20 of the Standard.
Mm.
The Nairobi County Assembly yesterday raided the budgets of key departments to finance a car grant scheme when members approved a 37.9 billion shilling supplementary budget. I'm assuming this is 37.9 million. The county's budget cannot afford a 37 billion shilling supplementary. 600 million plan to construct offices for the 123 MCAs and their staff was the biggest casualty after it was shelved in favor of 246 million to purchase vehicles. So there is money that they had budgeted initially, so they can build offices for MCAs. And then they thought, wait, office, we can work from home. Let's buy cars. Finance Budget Committee Chairperson Robert Mbatia revealed that 500 million had been slashed from the County Assembly Service Board, while 75 million shillings was cut from the recurrent budget for the Liquor and Licensing Board. We have opted to forego the luxury of having offices so that we can get our car grant. The funds for the grant are coming from two other sectors. The logic was that if members don't have offices, they can still use their cars to move in and out of the wards. Sound logic.
So you can work from your car.
That is sound logic. Yes. You don't need an office, but you need a vehicle to move to go to your ward.
Because worst comes to worst, you sleep in your car.
Yeah. The ward reps became the first in the country to set aside funds to buy the vehicles. This is from that promise by the president. The administrative building to house the ward reps was to be built on land set aside for parking between Taifa Road and City Hall Way. Construction was to be done in 3 phases over 3 years. So first of all, they had wanted this land that had been set aside for parking. They were going to take it up and build offices for themselves. Now they've decided, wachana ofisi, give us the cars. They have also gone and raided the County Assembly Service Board, and they've said, cut your budget. 75 million shillings taken away from the County Assembly Service Board. You guys don't need to hire anyone. Okay? Forget. Then they go to the Liquor and Licensing Board, which is the one that basically licenses all liquor selling stores in the country. Also goes to inspect all liquor selling stores in the country. Also goes to enforce that regulations in liquor licensing are being followed. Now they've been starved of cash so that MCAs can drive around.
Is there something in the water at the assembly?
Yes, it's in the air.
Somebody is breathing in something that makes you go a little cuckoo, because I don't understand. In terms of priorities, where are we? It's the water. Oh, yeah, like you said, the air. Unfiltered air. This is the problem that it's causing. There's something wrong.
There's something.
Because you can't tell me that it's logical thinking that made you then arrive at a decision like this. With all the other things that are currently going on.
They'll get what they want by hook or crook. That is the basic message. The Budget Committee also slashed the NMS's recurrent budget by 1.25 billion shillings and the development budget by 1.85 billion shillings. They slashed development budget.
To buy car and
Slashed
office.
development budget.
To buy car and office.
Bhatia said the reduction was meant to cater for pending bills related to the transferred functions. The funds, he added, would supplement another 2 billion allocation that had been set aside to pay contractors and suppliers. So slash development budget so that you can pay contractors and suppliers of previous development projects.
It's okay.
Let's just look at another story.
It's okay. Let's just look at another story. And let's look at the Kenya Films and Licensing Board and what they've been up to in the last couple of days. He dared the moral cop, and now his joke is no longer funny. Comedian Omondi faces years in jail over pornography. Comedian, after he was arrested yesterday by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations over his wife material show. Omondi's arrest comes months after Kenya Film Classification Board Chief Executive Ezekiel Mutua warned him to stop producing unauthorized explicit content. Mutua told the nation that Mr. Omondi was apprehended for violating the Films and Stage Plays Act by producing and distributing unauthorized content. He added that the comedian faces up to 5 years in prison, a 200,000 shilling fine, or both. The law says no person shall show a film at an exhibition to which the public is admitted or distribute such films unless he is registered by the board and issued a certificate. According to Dr. Mutua, the charges could include staging and screening pornography, illegal entry of foreigners, disturbance, and luring girls. This man lies to the girls and performs a mock wedding in the name of a show, according to Dr. Mutua. The girls who have come from other countries must have permission to film in Kenya. Since his first show, Omondi has not applied for a license. We will know more about the charges when he appears to court Friday. The arrest came a day after the comedian unveiled season 2 of Wife Material contestants at a Nakuru club where 2 girls were involved in a fight. Sheesh.
So Eric Omondi has just decided to go into another realm of content creation and content production. He goes afoul of the law. Now, so I often don't have issues with Ezekiel Mutua because Dr. Ezekiel Mutua is basically enforcing a law that has been. If you have a problem with what Ezekiel Mutua is doing, go
to the law,
to Parliament and amend the law. Otherwise,
it's the law.
I support Ezekiel. It's okay. It's about Ezekiel Mutua and what he looks at as the law and how he interprets the law, and that's why you're taken to court so that the court can either agree with the accusations by the Film Classification Board or disagree with that allegation. Anyway, the man called Omar Lali, there's a story in all the papers today about him. So he has been ordered to go to shed light on what happened between him and Keroche heiress Tekra. A Milimani Magistrate Court announced summoned him and 6 others to shed light on the circumstances that led to the death of Keroche Brewery's heiress Tekra Muigai. Senior Principal Magistrate Abdul Said said Lali is a person of interest. The lawyer representing Mrs. Muigai's family, that is Elisha Ongoya, said Lali is a compellable witness and has a civic duty to testify. So he's been called here to come in and testify and say, so what happened? We have heard testimony from one side talking about their relationship, talking about everything else, in which at some point it's even being alleged that this man was using juju to lure our girl and just confuse our girl into this relationship that they had. She was beyond herself. This was not her. There were other powers.
There must be an explanation, is what they're asking.
Yeah, I like the fact that he gets to come and tell his story, and I hope that he takes advantage of this. Come and tell your story, Omar Lali. Come and say how you met, what kind of relationship you had. If indeed you are in love, just come and say you're in love. If you are not in love and it was a business relationship, come and say. But at least
say something.
He gets a moment to come and speak his truth. And that will be very, very important. Keep it right here. The conversation continues on SpiceFM, online, and for the next 2 hours, we are also going to be live on KTN Home. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so let's look at what it looks like on the roads this Friday. Kiambu Road, actually today, not much of an issue. Moving well all the way from Sharks Place to the Evergreen Center. Kiambu Road today, already we're giving you 5 because things are moving very, very well. Ngong Road is bumper to bumper, moving into the city. Use the service lane also while you're still on Thika Road. It's clean till you approach the Muthaiga overpass. Then around there, you're going to have some problems, all right? Let's look also then at Langata Road coming out into the city, going towards Bagathi Way or then going then towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. You should be all right. Aerodrome Road is moving well without any issues right now. Mombasa Road already clogged from the SGR through to Nyeri Stadium today, moving slowly and also in the other direction as well. Langata Road, be careful. There is an electricity pole that is basically hanging in the middle of the road. This one, we need to be careful and hopefully Kenya Power can come and do something about that one. All right, let's take a look in about half hour when we're really into traffic hour and see how things are moving. Talk to us if you need to. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room,
2.5 minutes
the
after 7.
only way
This is
to
Kenya's
start
biggest
your day.
conversation, The Situation Room. Thank you very much for keeping it right here and locked this lovely Friday morning. This is the second hour of our show. We begin the show at 6 a.m. and conclude at 10 a.m. every weekday morning. In the room with you this morning is Ndu Oko and the C.
Yes.
My name is Eric Latif.
Your name is Eric
Okay.
Latif. Let me just remind
It's
you.
Ndu Oko
You,
and Eric Latif.
when you were born, your parents called you Eric Latif.
Okay.
Okay.
Siti Muga, our colleague, is away. He's okay, and we appreciate the concern. He's fine. He's all right. He's just enjoying himself. I said what? A glass of juice in hand, a pina colada in hand, and milk. He'll be back next week. Now, today's proverb. When a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. When a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. This is a Kenyan proverb.
When a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. You don't throw it all away.
Yeah. Don't burn it all down just because you feel stung by one.
True.
Deal with it. Okay? And that don't destroy everything else.
Like it.
Yes. So today is the 12th day of March 2021. It's Friday the 12th. A year ago, a day like today was Friday the 13th.
And that day, at about 10 a.m., just before 10 a.m., is when the CS Ministry of Health stood on the steps of Afia House and made the announcement that the first case of COVID-19 had been found in the country. And thereafter, everything opened up. He talked about this and talked about the fact that where the patient was and what they were expecting to do and hoping to do. That weekend, certain things happened. By Sunday, we heard that there was a raft of measures that was going to take place. The president also then, from State House, told us that schools were going to close with immediate effect the following week. Primary schools would close immediately. Those who were in boarding by Wednesday had to be home. Those who were in university by the next Friday had to be home. Church services, all religious services closed completely. Bars, restaurants, everything closed completely. And then there was going to be a curfew that was instilled from 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. For at least the next 3 months. So essentially, the nation was shut down. Thereafter, then we saw even tighter measures whereby certain counties, initially it was Kilifi, Mombasa, Nairobi, and Isiolo counties that were shut, and nobody was out or allowed able to move in or out of those counties, and said, look, we know that the situation is dire, we know that things are thick, but for now we're not allowing any kind of movement. So things went to shutdown status very, very quickly. And we saw cases, I think we started to see the first case, second case. By the time we reached case number 15, everybody now was panicking and saying, this is it. Then we saw the introduction of measures. Masks were an issue of debate. Are we going to have to wear masks? Do we need to? Is this thing airborne? One thing that was sure is that people washed their hands in this country that more in the last 1 year than they probably ever had in their total existence. Hands were being washed. Sanitizer was everywhere. People became instant businessmen because of masks and sanitizer and other things. People went to the supermarkets and were buying tissue and for reasons why they did not even know. People were making their own sanitizers at home. All kinds of things were going on. And then soon after that, we started to see high numbers of infections into the hundreds. into the 300s, into the 400s. And then after some time, things staved off and the first wave died down. Isolation, the whole quarantine debacle in this country, who was going to pay for it? Was it proper quarantine? Were there the amenities that you needed? Soap, water, proper food? Who was going to pay for it or not pay for it? We saw it become a measure that was almost used punitively, whereby you get picked up, you're sent to quarantine, as opposed to saying, are we really protecting people from getting this virus?
Yeah.
That whole debacle was there. People coming into the country, planes landing from China. There was the whole issue about how are we going to actually stop. And then the airspace was closed. Nobody can come into the country at all, at least for a particular point in time. Very many ways or very many measures put in place, if for anything to try and protect people from contracting this virus. Thereafter, we saw that the cases reduced quite significantly. And there was the call to start reopening again. To start reopening schools, there was a big no-no to that. To start opening businesses again, there was a big no to that. People learned to work from home. Transport was affected, whereby half the capacity now was what was being carried at one point in time or another. Until August, the airspace was closed. August, September is now when the airspace was opened, and people now were able to come back into the country with a negative CPR test, of course. And then we started to see exports again, slowly. The airline industry, the service industry, the tourism industry on their knees completely. And these are the things that we saw happen in very short succession, rapid succession over these months. And then things started to open up again. Certain counties opened up again. And then we got into the second wave, where we started to see 800, 1,000 cases per day. ICUs full. People dying at a rapid rate. And scandal here and there. All sorts of things happened as a result of COVID. And then schools opened again. And then we saw more cases. And then we went to Christmas. And coming into the new year, we were told we were going to get into a third wave. We were going to see high numbers again by the time we are in March. So 1 year later, in Kenya, we're in the third wave of COVID-19 right now. Likely to see more cases in the next few days? Absolutely. Are we going to get to the thousands from what we've been told? Yes, we are. In the next few days, we will be reporting about 1,000 cases per day in this country. Has it hit? Yes, it has. Has it hit hard in comparison to what is happening with other countries around the world? Probably not. And has this been as a result of the tight measures that have been put in place, of the endless sweat that has been applied to making sure that people don't contract the virus? Has the work that has been done been adequate? Is there more that could have been done? Was there a real threat if we still have people who are saying, well, we didn't feel the effects, nothing major has actually happened? 1 year on in COVID, 111,000 Kenyans have been, let's say there have been 111,000 positive tests from COVID-19. And unfortunately, 1,889 Kenyans have died from COVID-19. Have we felt the full effects of COVID that were designed to be felt in this country? Or are we still seeing that the worst is there to come? We're looking at a year of it today, and looking at the measures that were put in place and how it has been handled, whether it's been handled by individuals, whether it's been handled by government. And I will say that, look, we didn't feel the effects of COVID in this country, or have not felt it the way it has been felt in other countries.
In other parts of the
world.
Have
we done enough? Have we done enough? And can we do any more?
I think if we look back into the 1 year and even the months preceding this day last year, we can say that in terms of awareness, the government was aware, and the government was very much in conversations with the international community and seeing what's happening. And the government had already started putting measures in place to deal with COVID coming into the country.
Right.
To what extent? By the time we're seeing the president actually forming a disaster response committee, and this was the National Emergency Response Committee, and said, the cabinet secretary in charge of health shall sit on this as the head, and other cabinet secretaries who are closely involved or will have matters to do with this will be members of this committee. So saying, for example, the CS for tourism, the CS for transport, the CS for interior, the CS for information and communication are members of this, and then bringing in the other experts into it, good thing. And this happened long before. The president also ordered the formation of the task force that would support the work of the committee, that would inform the committee. And this one brought in now the technical people, from the doctors, from virologists, from people who would have information from the community, to principal secretaries who would feed information to the National Emergency Response Committee. Structure-wise, I think that was a good job that was done by the government. Did the two teams start working immediately? With time, we've seen that, yes, clearly they were working. Such that by the time we're even talking about announcing the first case, it's because a certain protocol had been followed. There was, all right, this is how it shall happen. Somebody goes into a health facility, they exhibit symptoms, they shall be taken here, the test shall happen at this place, information shall cascade upwards up to the point it gets to the CS or this committee, and then the CS shall announce. There was no leakage of information.
Nope.
From the point this person was in Rongai, came to Mbagathi, got tested, the test results came back positive, to the moment when CS Kagwe was announcing to the nation, there was no leakage, which means that there was a structure that was in place that was working. What also that structure started doing in terms of coming up with the protocol. So this is what we're going to do. People who are arriving at the JKIA, this is what is expected of you. You shall fill out these forms. You shall be required to go into quarantine. Structurally, very good. By that time, Kenya Airways was already not flying to some several destinations.
Right.
We also had, that's around the same time when China Southern had landed into JKIA, and there was a huge furore back and forth about why this plane has been allowed to land. But I think structurally, the government had actually done quite a good job in terms of putting in place the structures that would be able to manage this. How strong were those structures? How effective and efficient were those structures? Now, that's the question of debate. And I've said this many times before, that at the end, we must audit the whole process and ask ourselves what happened, what was done well, what was not done well, and be very honest with ourselves. What worked, what didn't work. Because like you said, the whole debacle of the quarantine, initially people were requested to go and self-quarantine. And then there was no follow-up on whether the people are quarantining or not. And that's why we saw people being arrested, including the deputy governor of Kilifi, being arrested because, oh, you were supposed to have quarantined and then you ended up in public gatherings and public meetings. And it's because you're a public leader that you could be seen.
Sure.
And that's why we're able to tell that you were not quarantining. But then it tells you that the structure of managing that quarantine process was not so strong. When we said now we are going to make sure that people are going to quarantine in facilities that we know, so that we can then send our healthcare workers to go and monitor and treat and test. And then we can move them from, if anybody tests positive, to isolation to treatment. That also, good structure. How well managed was it? Not so well managed, because we had conversations here in March last year. People calling and saying, we've just arrived at JKIA, we spent 4 hours, we don't know where we are going. And then buses come, we are bundled into buses, we go, we are dropped at a hotel, and then we are told by the hotel, okay, here, you're going to be paying 5,000 shillings, 6,000 shillings, 8,000 shillings. We spoke to people who had just arrived, man, wife, children, father, mother, children, a family of, I don't know how many, and they were put up in a hotel. They ended up paying a bill of over 400,000 shillings. Why? Because they went in quarantine, and then the government decided, some of you misbehaved in that quarantine, so we are going to extend the period of quarantine, and it's at your own cost. That was not very well managed. Even to the point where the healthcare workers who needed to go and manage those people in the quarantine facilities did not even know what they were supposed to do. Are we coming to test you on the first day? Are we testing you on the 7th day? How are you handling your hygiene issues? All that wasn't very well managed. But here we are, a year later, and we are talking about 1,889 deaths. Those are many people. This is as close to or equal to the number of people who died in post-election violence in 2008. This is a high number.
It is.
But if we compare to what we have seen in other countries where they report 2,000 deaths per day.
Brazil is losing 2,000 people per day as we speak. Yeah. as we speak. This is the number of people that Kenya has lost in the last 12 months.
Yes, in a whole year. We can say that there have been very many things that we've been spared. We've been spared the big blunt and the impact of this. Is it because of things that the government has done? Partly. Is it because of things that we have done? Partly. But largely, I say, it's not because of what we have done or what the government has done. Not. The way we have behaved as a citizen, now leave alone the government. The way we see ordinary citizens and their leaders behaving in public rallies, the way we see them not wearing face masks, not observing social distancing, not, following all the protocols that have been laid down, and yet we are only talking about 100,000 positive cases, tested positive. I think this is beyond you and I and beyond the government. We are lucky.
Lucky?
We are lucky.
Is there an element of luck that's being played here?
An element of unexplainable.
Because we would have seen... Okay, let's look at some of the countries where this was really terrible, right? If we look at what happened with Italy in the earlier stages, China, even with all the noise that was made about China still only had 86,000 cases of COVID. China was nowhere near even 100,000. China, with 1 billion people.
Yep.
The Indian subcontinent right now has about 10 million cases, 11 million cases. The United States with 29 million. But if we look at the effects that it had on some countries, like Italy, where we heard the horror stories of people in beds outside hospitals, waiting, hoping that they would get some kind of treatment, dying. They had to call doctors out of retirement to come and treat their people. They had to make sure that old people were not allowed anywhere near public places because they didn't know how they would react if they got into contact with the virus. Terrible things happening. If we look at today and what's happening in Brazil, thousands of people being infected every day in the 60,000s daily, 2,000 people dying. Surely we can't compare with what's going on here. Even in South Africa, where at some point we saw huge numbers, where we had 1,000 people at some point dying in a day, upwards of 20,000 cases being recorded on a daily basis, and things seem to have died down by now. Truly on the African continent, if we want to really look at this thing critically, whether people were reporting or not, whether your reporting mechanisms were tip-top or not, the truth of the matter is that things did not affect, in terms of COVID-19, on this side of the world, the way in which they did, especially in the Western Hemisphere. I don't know if I can attribute it to luck. I don't know, Eric, if we can attribute it to luck. I would not be able to say, then why is it that people did not get affected the way they did? Because look, our communication, our reporting systems, our monitoring and evaluation systems are dodgy. Really, we have a problem when it comes to sharing information. The infrastructure that we have set up, even for things like contact tracing and things like that, okay, not up to scratch. But if people were dying and falling off the face of the earth like flies, surely it would have shown up somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
It would have shown up somewhere.
Would know about it.
Yeah, but it hasn't happened.
If 3 times this number had died so far, 1,889, if we were talking about 4,000 people would have died by now, would be knowing about it. So it's not all about whether the government is actually, holding back some numbers and hiding some numbers, would still know about it. Death, you cannot hide death.
You can't hide it, no.
Because death means that people are affected. Death means that there's going to be a burial. Death means that somebody's going to be missing from work for a long time. Death means that somebody's not being seen in the village. Death cannot be hidden. So clearly, 1,889 deaths attributed to COVID in the last 1 year, close to the truth.
We're lucky.
And that's why I'm saying, I cannot explain and say that, I can't sit back here and comfortably say, what the government of Kenya has done. It has really been able to contain COVID-19 and the spread of COVID-19 in the country. I can't say that confidently. I cannot also say, that the people of Kenya decided we are going to listen to the government, and also we are going the extra mile to do this and the other so that we stop the spread of COVID-19 in the country. I cannot say that. We haven't done any of that. We ought to be doing what the government tells us. We are not doing it. We ought to be doing a lot. We ought to be observing these measures religiously every waking day, We don't do that. We end up meeting in public places. You end up with, okay, this is a very good friend of yours. You haven't seen them in a long time. And now you decided, you guy, hey, we haven't seen each other for some time. Let's have lunch. Meet for lunch. What do? You don't just fist bump. You're actually now sitting close to each other. You don't know where this person has been. You don't know the kind of exposure that either of you have had. But you've put down your face mask because you're having lunch. And
somebody you know.
Another. And then now this is somebody you know. And then you move closer and closer as the evening wears off. Come on. This is not because of anything that we've done. And that's why, as Pastor Latif, I'll tell you, the thing that comes to my mind is that Bible verse in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6. And it says, so he said to me, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. It is not by anything that we have done. Well, there's something that we've done. But what we've done compared to what the risks are, it's not what we've done that has gotten us to this point.
My goodness.
I say it's higher power. It's higher power, and we need to be grateful. But at the same time, we need to start thinking seriously, what is it that we can do? People are calling us and saying, what COVID?
There's no COVID.
People are now looking at this time, and the CS Mutahi Kagwe says, we are into the third wave. They're like, but the president is supposed to be lifting the curfew on Friday. Now you start telling us that third wave. Come on. There are people who are already starting to raise questions. Oh, Raila has announced that he has tested positive. Coincidence. Raila tests positive. 1 year of COVID. The president is supposed to be lifting the curfew. What is this? It's all calculated. We as a people are just sitting there treating like this is a joke. From day one, many people treated this as a joke. There are 1,889 families that have lost their loved ones.
Who've lost their people. And you know, then that element of luck or divine help or divine grace, then you would have to ask the question, does it mean that this hand of divine grace did not spread to those countries whereby people were suffering in the manner in which they have been?
I don't know. These are the questions that, people who want to fight religion will ask. So this one who's saving you, why could he save those ones? I do not want to engage in that. I don't know. All right? I don't know. I don't know why Africa. Why not the rest of the world? Even scientists are grappling to understand.
I'm still trying to understand because it had already been predicted by very many, right?
Why not the rest of the world?
It had been predicted by very many. I mean, from the Gates to the science journalists to scientists across to experts saying that Africa definitely, with what we see happening around the world, hundreds of thousands of people will be dead in Africa by the time December 2020 clocks. Okay, so we're still here. Unfortunately, what this narrative does at the same time is that it attributes an element, it then invites an element of carelessness in people to say, you see, it's been here for a year. You have not died. It's not our problem. In fact, one could say that the reason why we even started getting infected is because people who had traveled here, they're the ones who brought it in. I hear that narrative. The first person in Nigeria to get infected was an Italian. You bring it, and then you bring it to us. Had you not brought it, we wouldn't have had it. This is stuff people are saying right now, today, that because of the international travel, that's why you brought it. If not, we would not have had it in the first place. Now, bringing in such an argument then now allows people to continue to peddle this thing and say, well, you know what? We don't really have it anyway, so no big deal, no big problem. And I would like to take the point and say, look, it doesn't matter. You can still be careful. People still died. People are still getting sick today. We will hear in a short while people who have had it and what they've had to go through, and probably lessons on how we can be extremely careful when it comes to what we do or do not do to contract COVID. It's not an old wives' tale or a myth or something that you've never seen or can understand, like the Bermuda Triangle or the Loch Ness Monster. This one is real. It's here.
It's here with us. And we want to hear from you this morning, 0719-012-600, as we commemorate 1 year since the first case of COVID-19 was announced in the country and formally confirmed. How would you rate the response by the government? How would you rate the response by the citizens? These two The response by the government, the response by the citizens. That's what we'd like you to tell us. If we look back into the 1 year, what are the lessons? What are the hits? What are the misses? And what lessons can we pick going into the second year? Good morning, 26 minutes after 7. Time for a break on KTN Home, Spice FM, and online. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card...
All right, so we're still looking at mostly clear conditions in Nairobi, 16 degrees. It'll go to highs today of 28, sunny conditions throughout. Nyeri is mostly sunny at 13, highs of 26 and lows of 13. 30 will be the high in Nakuru, partly sunny conditions at 15. 16 degrees and sunny in Eldoret, highs of 27 and lows of 13. 32 will be the high in Kisumu today, going quite warm into the weekend. 20 degrees and sunny in Kakamega, highs of 33 and lows of 15. We're looking at 32 as the high in Mombasa, mostly sunny today at 25. Partly sunny in Malindi at 26, highs of 31 and lows of 26. 18 will be the low today and mostly sunny in Kampala, currently at 21. It's partly sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, highs of 33 and lows of 25. Partly sunny in Johannesburg at 15, highs of 27 and lows of 15, where it's mostly clear in Lagos today at 27, highs of 32, highs of 32 as well in Kinshasa, where it's mostly cloudy at 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so are we still seeing? Yes, we're still seeing some traffic on Thika Road today as you're trying to get into the city. Today, Kiambu Road looking very, very good. No drama as such. Coming though to the Pangani underpass as well as the Muthaiga overpass today, then it's going to slow down a little bit. The service lanes are performing very well today, so use those so you don't have to get stuck in too much traffic. All right, let's also take a look then coming up towards Westlands. There's some outbound traffic, but remember that construction that's taking place on what was that bridge will also slow things down considerably. The Red Hill bypass, though, moving into the city is easier for you today. All right, let's keep an eye on things as we go ahead, but it doesn't look like too crazy a Friday. Hoping it remains just that. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Situation Room. We are live on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret is 96.7, Nyeri is 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. We're live on Spice FM. We're also live on KTN Home, as well as being online. Spice FM KE. We live stream the show on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well, and our www.spicefm.co.ke. Let's go to the phone lines. Today is Friday, the 12th day of March 2021. A year ago, on Friday, the 13th of March 2020, C.S. Mutahi Kagwe, the Cabinet Minister for Health, came out to announce that Kenya had recorded and confirmed the first case of COVID-19 in the country. 1 year later, what is it that you can say have been the wins, the misses, and the lessons that we can take Rate the government's response. Rate the citizens' response. Let's go to the phone line 0719-012-600. Jerry, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Undu. First of all, I'm so glad that you guys are discussing the issue of COVID-19. I think looking at the numbers recently, we are very clear that something is going wrong. When you have a 14% north of 14% infection rate, it's time for us to just take our precautions seriously.
Yes.
I know COVID-19 has inconvenienced many people, and when you look at, I'm hearing you guys discussing the issue of why has Africa not been impacted. I think it's something that scientists need to pick up, because if you look at the SARS, the swine flu, flus generally don't impact Africa as much as they impact the rest of the world. And so I frankly didn't expect much to happen with sub-Saharan Africa, and that has largely remained true. However, COVID has claimed people I know. We recently had a regional leader being buried by a leading corporate district. I knew the man. It was personal. It shook me. It was really painful. I have friends who are suffering from COVID. And the truth of the matter is, it's inconvenient wearing masks all the time. It's inconvenient not being able to visit your family and friends. I mean, really, it's generally a torrid life we're leading right now. But when I'm listening to you guys and listening to people and how we're just being very lackadaisical about how we deal with masks, about how we deal with sanitization, most of us will get it because we are strong on balance. We have our immunity being high. But the problem is we're exposing our relatives, our friends, those who are not as strong as us, those who don't have strong immunity. So what's the point, man? I mean, what are we trying to prove when you can see literal human beings that you can put a name to? The leader of the Presbyterian Church who died of COVID, he's my neighbor in Shags. He went to school with my auntie and uncle. So this is a person I know. I've got neighbors, literal neighbors, next door neighbors who have passed away from COVID. I've got people I can point out and tell you this one, and that one are my friends. And they've had it or have it right now. I mean, it's really concerning me. I wish our leaders, though, would lead by example. Because the problem is when you have leaders being the first ones to flout the very rules that they themselves put in place, when you have leaders greeting people, they are sending the wrong signals. I think it's important for us to enforce COVID-19 restrictions and rules, because one lost life is one too many. Unfortunately, there are families that are losing their loved ones. Why should those families suffer because we are being careless?
Jerry, why do you think there's that attitude, though, of people who believe that this thing does not exist or that it's not as serious as it really is? Why do you think that is? Because I think about the conversations that we had just yesterday, and it's overwhelming the numbers of people who are telling us that this thing is not real. Even a year later, with 1,889 deaths later, 111,000 people infected later, there's still people who believe that this thing is not real. Why do you think that attitude prevails?
Because for a majority of people, and I kind of get it, is that COVID has wrought, the economic impact of COVID. For some people to continue to acknowledge COVID is to accept the restrictions that the government has put in place, especially with the curfews. And if the government goes back to, say, the semi-lockdown, the restrictions in movement, it literally affects people's lives. So if somebody has to continue acknowledging that COVID exists, it also means they have to accept the inconvenience and the discomfort that has been brought up upon their lives with respect to the economy. So if you deny COVID exists, it also means by extension, you're telling the government you're being unreasonable by putting up this curfew, you're being unreasonable with these restrictions, remove them. So I think that's the space many people find themselves in. And to be fair, I kind of get it. I get it. Some of us have the luxury of understanding that COVID exists because, you've got a job. You still have a salary. Even if it's 50%, you still have some sort of livelihood. But I think balancing those two needs and the government having to say, we understand where majority of you are coming from, but we also have a moral responsibility to save every life. That's where government now comes in and flies above everybody else and backs what people want.
Right.
We hear you. Thank you very much, Jerry, for your contribution.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you so much for a great show. Have a good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning to you too. Stephen in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Looking back
I'm
into
calling
1 year
from
of COVID, Stephen.
Yeah. This that's been devastating. I would want to say that we were affected as a family.
Okay.
I lost my own brother, and actually, when it started, we didn't know it is going to be as it went. Yeah, and I would say also the impact also affected us economically. My brother was a clinical officer in Nandi, and actually, when it came to the time of after he passed away, we were slapped with a big bill. We had spent around 800,000 as a family, and later on we received a bill of almost 2 million.
Wow.
So I would say actually this is real.
Yeah.
Even my own parents, they cannot still believe up to now that we lost our brother.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, I don't know what to say.
Stephen, let me
I
ask
think
you.
This issue. Yeah.
In the case of your brother, for how long was he hospitalized?
You know, this thing started. It started on 3rd of November.
Yep.
And from the wave, they could not even see. They were seeing as if it is something which was not. It was like a dream.
Okay.
So we got to know as brothers and sisters maybe on 7th when he was already taken on isolation.
Days later.
Then, and then later on now from 11th of November onward, we was struggling. Until the time we lost his memory around on 21st of November.
Yeah.
And he passed away on 2nd of December.
Poleni sana, Stephen.
Yeah.
Oh, sana, Stephen.
What would you like to tell the people who, are sitting back and saying, come on, this thing is a creation of the government, this is a figment of someone's imagination, or even those who are saying, yes, there is COVID, but the numbers, as they're saying now that there is a new wave, are not as high as they want us to believe. What did you say to such people?
This thing is real. I would say it is real. And, I don't know how to describe it. But what I would say is that the government maybe would have to move in and put more restrictions.
Okay.
Because majority of the families, they are scared. Even the other day, we've just talked with my brothers today. We are just trying to tell them to actually, we are scared. We fear even moving out.
Yeah, it's scary.
Even when we are in offices or when we are moving, wherever we are, it's actually scary.
It's hanging close.
When
Thank you very
people
much,
does not
Stephen.
have masks.
Yeah.
When you hear people saying it doesn't exist, it exists. And I would be very happy. Maybe I would only say that I wish to congratulate the former Prime Minister for actually having come out and actually say that is positive.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, because if we cannot get it from our leaders, and I would say sorry to the Prime Minister maybe of what has happened.
Yep.
And maybe we would, in my own view, we would also put off these issues of campaigns we are seeing taking place.
For sure.
People moving in and out.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Maina in Nyeri, good morning.
Morning too.
Good morning.
Morning to do.
Yes.
So Maina, 1 year of COVID in the country. Looking back, what would you say? What are the big lessons that you've learned?
Me have learned that you should actually follow the rules and the regulation. You should sanitize, wear mask, and follow those rules and the regulation put up by the government in order for us to stay alert. The other thing I would like to caution Kenyans there is time for joke at the swallowing of the bone. We have witnessed what has happened to others, and we should run a lesson.
Yeah.
But the worst thing here is all about our politicians. Because they should walk the talk. They should not preach water or drinking wine.
Yep.
Let them to the line of the precaution. And the other Kenyans actually will follow them. We are expecting the president to extend those measures and the precaution because things have become worse and worse.
They're getting worse. Like you've said,
They are getting worse.
there's time for
Actually,
joking.
We have seen even the former prime minister now, he is admitted and we are saying sorry, we wish him quick recovery.
Yeah.
Let people not take it lightly. This thing is real.
It's real. Thank you very much, Maina.
Yeah, thank you.
Asante sana. Yeah, go on. Good morning.
Good morning, Nyeri.
How are you?
Good morning.
There is an echo, sijui mbona.
Simu yako.
Not in allowed.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, I will start by the hit of the government. What we have learned after this corona period is that prevention is better than cure.
Yep.
And improving on the public health care is mandatory and it's very crucial.
Yeah.
Because currently, for example, for my case, I'm a medical lab technologist. I deal with many samples. And if you see the issues of tuberculosis, gastroenteritis from young children, there are limited cases of diarrhea cases. Even intestinal worms right now, for you to cut, it's very rare. The patients of TB, we are only continuing with those who existed before.
Okay.
The follow-ups. But the issue of the first one, those who have been infected, very, very low. So at least this corona came and taught us some things which we were ignoring, like washing hands, covering our mouths. Because you could see somebody having a cough or maybe suffering from the TB, but he or she could not isolate himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big
so
lesson
I
there.
think that's a big lesson. What the government is missing is that there are the protocols which they had used before are ni wao wenyewe ndio wana break. Because we have politicians now either in counties, rallies, they are not protecting our people.
Yeah.
So even this third wave, I don't want Kenyans to see that we are being told that there is that wave so that we can take vaccines. No, vaccine at first when it arrives to the country, Kakwe said it is voluntary.
Yeah.
But because of the increase of campaigns, that is why we have this surge increase.
Right now.
So I think what I expect the president to do today is because we are still long for 2022 elections. If we can ban out political rallies, then we can manage the third wave.
Thank you very much, Egon.
But mismanaging the third wave because we have a vaccine, it will lead us into trouble.
Into bigger trouble.
Asante.
Thank you, Egon. Thank you very much. Julius in Nakuru, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you guys for having me on. Now, allow me to express my disappointment regarding this pandemic. Number one, it's real. COVID is real.
Julius,
COVID,
your line, Julius, is not very clear. Let's see if we can get you on a better line. Let's hear from Stephen. Stephen in Nairobi, good morning.
And good morning, Do.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you, Karibu.
Because this is one of the radio stations that discusses intellectual discourses as opposed to other stations that you really cannot want to listen to the family. Nevertheless, allow me to contribute.
Go ahead.
I'll take a different opinion to hold this issue.
Okay.
I think what is ailing us as a country is always that culture of impunity in the sense that people think that rules are there to be broken, and more so for the ruling elite. As far as the handling of this COVID issue is concerned, I think that the government should just strengthening the implementation of these measures as far as enforcement is concerned. Because, Eric, we really need to balance between livelihoods as well as saving lives. Because you realize there is an interesting observation that one person once made and say that if you are hungry, you are sure going to die. But if you have COVID, there are high chances, like 80%, that you're going to survive. Nevertheless, it's not an analogy that I would want to follow. All the same that you can look at this trend. If you study these trends, there is always an apparent spike in increase in the reporting when we are nearing the lifting of this, or rather the review of these restrictions. So then this creates an impression or perception around the local mwananchi that the government always artificially manipulate these figures. Because for some instance, once some people are saying because more people are reluctant to take the vaccines, perhaps it's a scare tactic for more people to embrace the same. But
probably, you
so
know,
the issue of the communication now,
think about this, Stephen.
Yes.
The case of the current spike, for example, was predicted by scientific models done by experts at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, who said that because of the kind of activity we have seen around December and early January, then you're likely to see a spike hitting its peak in March. Maybe it's the same reasoning that also informs the president when he's announcing these measures to say that I'm announcing the measures that will end around this time in March. So by the time we're getting there, we know that we'll go into a new wave, then we'll review and see what other measures to put in place. Based on the same model. It's based on the same model that the president, for example, decided that we shall review this in 3 months. He didn't say, let's review it in 12 weeks. He didn't say, let's review this in 4 or 5 months. He said, let's review it in 3 months. So I think at this point, let's always give I want to give the benefit of doubt to the experts who advise the president on put the restrictions up to this point. Let's review at that point. There must be a reason why March. So it's not it's not the spike that follows that coincides with the announcement. It's basically was meant to be this from the very beginning.
I agree with you. And to some extent, the same modeling was done at the acute phase of the pandemic, where they had projected, I can't remember the figures, but there was steep cases. They had projected up to close to 10,000 to 30,000 deaths. But we also know that scientific modeling, they are based on very, very many factors. And they have variants because if some factors are implemented, then that modeling might produce different results. And the point I'm making is that instead of extending measures that is going to hurt businesses and actually contribute to further loss of jobs and misery of the local population, they should focus on strict enforcement and implementation of these measures while allowing businesses to proceed smoothly. That's exactly my point.
I get your point. I get your point. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Josh in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Josh.
Thanks. Yeah, karibuni uji.
Asante.
Asante.
Now, one thing that still puzzles me, it's the way we see our leaders still behaving. You don't expect someone like His Excellency the President, the Deputy, probably the former PM, still to expose them the way they are exposing them when they know the seriousness of this pandemic. So, and I feel how many citizens are still feeling that this thing probably is a scam, as some are saying, or it is not as serious as the numbers are depicting. So, and also another concern that I have, you remember there is a time that we had a conversation that the vaccine, it will take, I don't know how many, like 6 months, a year, 2 years before it is approved. But now, right now, the jab is inside in people's bodies. So what changed? That now we have the jab and it has been approved. And I don't know if you have seen this clip that is going around in social media of doctors, I don't know, from Spain, from Germany, who are cautioning people not to take the jab. Because if it floats, it will even have dangerous repercussions. They are saying that it can even alter your gene and that is irreplaceable or it is irreversible. How serious is that?
There's always schools of thought. There's always schools of thought, Josh. And what you then look out for is what are the major authorities in the health sector saying about it? If, for example, a certain vaccine has gone up to the point of being allowed to be used, being approved, there are several stages that has gone through, including peer review.
Okay.
So that means that the majority of the members of the profession are okay. There's always going to be a minority who will have an issue.
Somebody who says no.
Yeah. But thank you very much, Josh.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's hear from Lydia in Nakuru. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very fine. Now,
yes.
First of all, I want to say sorry to the Raisa.
Yes.
Because what happened to him. Now, he was they were somewhere, and then you hear that he had a fatigue, and then he had this virus.
Yes.
Now, what I would ask the government is to stop these politics rallies for a while.
Okay.
And then our mistake, Kenyans, we are not taking it seriously. We are taking it easy. Ati hii kitu imekuja leo na itaisha kesho. Then we are not taking when you wear these barakoa, you have to close it in a proper way because hii homa si kitu ya kuchezewa. Wakati imekuja na wakati umevaa barakoa na uvai vizuri, wakati unakohoa yule mwingine atapata.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Na wakati mko wengi na huyo mtu pengine ako nayo na hujui, wengi mtapata. What I would ask the government it is to stop these rallies.
Yes.
And then we as Kenyans, we have to take this caution in a serious way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lydia. Julius in Nakuru, good morning.
Yes, Eric.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I wish to state a few facts before we proceed.
Yeah.
So, number one, COVID is real. Anyone who is up to this moment, who is denying that it's a scam, whatever they are calling it, they need to re-examine themselves seriously.
Yep.
Number two, we do not have a real healthcare system in this country. Our healthcare system itself is in ICU. So when we have that is a fact.
Yeah.
Now, when you bring in a pandemic, you're pushing the healthcare system into the HDU or whatever other unit that handles very critical patients. Number three, ignorance. Almost 90% of our people, let's accept this, we are ignorant. You see guys boarding a matatu, not putting on a mask. You see guys in the street putting on a mask and they see a policeman. You see people saying, no, hii ni ugonjwa ya wazungu. Come on, guys. This is real. People are dying. People have already died.
Yeah.
You have lost people from those societies, those developed nations which have a very strong healthcare system.
So we are not actually doing what we should do to take care of ourselves and to take care of
The
each
number
other.
one problem, the number one problem with this pandemic is not the government.
Mm.
It is us. Who is attending those political rallies?
It's us.
Without even a mask.
Sure.
It is us.
Yeah.
So what is going to happen if they call for a rally and we don't show up? They're not going to call for another rally tomorrow. And we are doing this in the midst of a pandemic.
Yep.
So these are facts that we cannot deny.
We cannot deny them. And thank you very much for listing them out, Julius. Asante sana for your call this morning.
Thank you too. Thank you guys for bringing this up.
Thank you so
Asante
much.
sana. 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We are broadcasting on SpiceFM. We are also broadcasting the show and live streaming it on KTN Home, showing the radio experience to a TV audience. Keep it right here, because in the next hour, the conversation is actually going to move into real story of somebody who had COVID-19 and they survived. And this is a KTN presenter who will be joining us. Ian Dennis will be here in the next hour to tell us his own experience with COVID-19, what he went through, and also we'll want to hear from you of the experiences that you've gone through. Good morning.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
So as we come to the top of the hour, let's just hear from Aaron, who's calling from Elgeyo Marakwet. Aaron, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning too.
Good morning.
Yeah.
What do you make of 1 year of COVID in the country?
Okay, unajua COVID-19 imekuja na imekuja na madhara yake, na madhara yenye haieleweki ilikuja namna gani. Kwa sababu ukiangalia vizuri hii COVID-19 watu hawajaamini sana. Ndio maana wakiambiwa hata wafae barakoa wanaona ni kitu kama banishment.
Yeah.
Ukiangalia leo kuna wanatoa what you call something like that. So ile kitu tunatarajia ni kwamba tuachilie Wakenya wajichunge vyao. Tunaona wako na uwezo wa kujichunga. Kama mtu unafaa ufae barakoa, umeambiwa ufae barakoa. Kama utaki ufae.
So waachiliwe.
Waachiliwe kabisa, watu wasifungiwe. Na hii mambo na chanjo, hatuelewi chanjo imekuja juu saa hii, increment of people contracting with this virus inaenda juu. So inaleta vitu haieleweki sana, haieleweki kabisa.
Aaron.
So wacha Kenya ikiwa open.
Aaron, saa tatu msemaji wa serikali Cyrus Oguna atakuwa hapa kwa studio. So sikiliza, tutamuuliza hiyo swali.
Nataka nimuulize. Wacha tu
So sikiliza alafu utasikia. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. At 9 o'clock, the government spokesman will be here and we'll be asking some of these questions that are coming from our audience. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so right around Ngara this morning, we're seeing quite a lot of traffic is trying to get into the city, coming from coming from Thika Road. Gong Road is where there was an accident this morning, and it's still an accident scene right now. A couple of folks knocked head on, unfortunately. Approach that scene with caution, please, and that's heading towards town on Gong Road. Be very careful. Okay, so the train is not working, and this is one that left. It should have been leaving Donholm at this point. Not working this morning, so folks have to get off and use other means of public transport. That's something we have to look out for. Right. We're looking at industrial area. That construction continues, so there is still some traffic in industrial area this morning trying to get into the city. Where it has all begun now is on Uhuru Highway between Nyeri Stadium roundabouts all the way through to Westlands. Very slow, also in both directions. The bypasses, Eastern, Southern, Northern, and Red Hill, behaving very well today as well. It's a good Friday, I'd say. SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Text us 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. This morning with you is Eric Latif and Nduoko. Our colleague C.T. Muga is well. He's resting. He'll be with us next week. Today's proverb: when a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. When a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives.
All of you who even look anything like this trouble that I'm having, kick you out of here.
Kick you out of here because one of you stung me. No. You don't do that. We'll continue the conversation as we look back into 1 year of COVID-19 in the country. Remember, Friday the 13th, 2020 was the day the CS Mutahi Kagwe came to the steps of Harambee House, right? On that day.
On that day was Harambee House.
That day was Harambee House.
Yes, it was.
And made the announcement that Kenya has recorded the first case of COVID-19. Said it was a Kenyan who had traveled from the US via London and arrived and spent some time and then developed some symptoms, went and got tested, and the test came out positive. And since that day, we have been dealing with COVID-19 in the country. We are at a point where we have over 111,000 cases confirmed in the country, 1,889 deaths so far. Many people have known somebody or people who have been affected by COVID-19. Many people have tested positive and recovered from COVID-19. Many, 1,889, have tested positive and not recovered from COVID-19. We have one of the people who have recovered from COVID-19 joining us in the studio just to come and tell us the story of how he went through that whole experience. And this is Ian Dennis. He's a host of The Business Coach on KTN Home. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I'm still laughing in my mind about the proverb.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Yes.
It's a proverb. It's a Kenyan proverb.
It is.
You can directly relate to it, right?
Yes, directly. But I don't remember going through it in school.
There are very many proverbs. If you actually went to school to just study proverbs, you could do the entire 844.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just doing proverbs. So Ian,
yes,
it's 1 year since the first case of COVID was recorded in the country.
Yeah.
You're one of those in the statistics of
Yes.
111,000 positive cases in Kenya.
Yes.
And also one of those in the statistics of over 100,000 who have recovered
Yes.
from COVID in the country.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us your experience. When did you contract COVID, and did you get symptomatic or asymptomatic?
So mine was a very interesting case. I remember it was in July. And I remember that time everybody was a bit cautious in terms of interacting with people. So just ensuring that because of the government directives, keeping social distance and just having interactions with people, their travels and all that stuff. So just keeping close to my friends. But I remember that particular point, it started off the lockdown, being at home. So I remember one particular weekend, I think just staying in the house was just too tiring because we started working from home. So most of the week you're home and then just making that precaution. So we decided to go to Karura just to go have, just ride and just have a walk. And I remember after that particular experience, I'm not sure if I got it there. I remember just hanging with my friends. The following week now, I just started experiencing some symptoms whereby I had chest pains. I was very tired. I will start my day up, but I will sleep most of the day. I was just extremely tired. And most of the time I will experience chest pains and my body was just completely tired. So it went on for a couple of days until I told my friends about it until they insisted, hey, just go to the hospital. And because I had some historical medical case of me having pneumonia, so I presume maybe it might be that. So I went to the hospital, and true to it, I did a couple of tests, and then the test came out that I had pneumonia. But the doctor was very cautious. He's like, oh yes, this is pneumonia, but it has the same symptoms as COVID. So he advised that the hospital at that point couldn't test, so they told me go get a test. And since it was that point whereby things were still very new, I'd not known anybody. Remember that point? Do you know someone who has corona? No. Do you know someone? I was like, no. So the following day I decided, what's it called? I told the office because I thought it was prudent to actually do that. And then I went to do the test, and then the test came out positive, and it was quite shocking. Because I remember the senior HR called me. I was like, okay, this is an interesting call. So I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm negative. And then it just struck me. I'm like, yeah, you're positive. And you had pneumonia here. So at that particular point now, I decided after I got that particular news, so I had to go back to the hospital and find out what exactly it was. What do I need to do? Because I had no idea what exactly I needed to do at that particular point. And at when I went out to the hospital back, because I remember my temperature was just normal. Because the previous day I'd checked up already in the hospital, my temperature was normal. The only symptoms I had were just the tiredness, my chest was just clogging up, and just a lot of just feeling always down. So when I went back to the hospital, I think also the hospital had not experienced that. And I remember walking, because I'd not told anyone. I had my mask. I knew I was positive. No one knew. So when you go to the hospital, they do the normal checks, and then I requested to see the doctor. So when I saw the doctor, I was like, yeah, I broke the news to her. I think she was in shock. I think she was in shock because and the hospital is still trying to get how they're supposed to deal with it. Yeah. So something weirdly happened. So let me go pick some papers. There's some protocol the team was setting up. I was in the office alone for around 40 minutes until I got so pissed because I felt I was being discriminated against. I actually had to walk out of the hospital because I think the doctor was scared because they had not dealt with that. And I think you're just using that particular illusion of I'm going to get some documents and find out what protocols need to be done. So I just walked out of the hospital. So at that point, I just drove back home and I started calling a couple of friends. What did I need to do?
Okay, hold on. So, Ian, you took a test.
Yes.
Where did you go to have this test done?
I did it at Lancet at that point, yes.
All right. So, I mean, at this time, sure, you're right, because by the time we were in July, it was about 3 months after the first case. So things were still kind of up in the air.
Yes.
We were going through that whole quarantine debacle, who is being quarantined, where stigma was at its peak. There was nothing like this. This home-based care was a story.
Yes.
It was not, we didn't even know the centers where people could go get tested yet, right?
Yes.
At that time, however, quarantine was mandatory.
Yes.
And then after you were found positive, isolation then was mandatory.
Yes.
So after you found out you were positive, having gone to the hospital and you really didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
What did you do when you went to the hospital that day and these folks disappeared? You left the hospital. Did anybody call you back
from the hospital?
Try and
nothing.
No one noticed you leaving.
Nobody noticed you leaving.
No, actually,
even the doctor that you had told that you were positive, so I'd maybe make a phone call.
So it was very interesting. I was in the hospital. He left me in that room for almost 40 minutes. And then so I was like, okay, so what's up? So I had to leave and then I had to go back to the receptionist. They didn't know I'm positive because I had my mask, just making my own particular precaution. And I didn't want to tell them that this actually had happened because at that point there was a lot of stigma. So what I did, because when you go to the hospital, you pay a consultancy fee. So the first thing I went was like, hey, I came to be seen by a doctor and the doctor just left me there. So are you guys going to refund me?
I mean,
I go home.
Valid question, yes.
Yeah, it is a valid question. And then they asked me, had you gone to the doctor's office? Yes, I went, but he hasn't attended to me. And then you can't be refunded. I was so pissed off at that particular point. So I decided just got into the car and went home. They never called me. They never did anything to it. I just don't want to mention the hospital. But it was just, I was very pissed off because at that particular point, there's a lot of stigma to it.
So what did you do? You went home,
camped
out at home for another 2 weeks? What did you do?
So I went back home at that particular point. But on my way, before I leave in the hospital, I told a couple of close friends that I was positive, guys I will trust. And then they gave me advice. At that point, they told me that you need, because I have a friend of mine who just, consumed a lot of information around what you need to do around this. So he advised me, go to the chemist, pick some vitamin C's and get some, cod liver oil, the tablets, just to help boost your immunity. And just get lots of fruits and just ensure that you eat well. So that's what I did. I went to the pharmacy. Interestingly, I went to the pharmacy and they spoke to the lady who was there and they just mentioned to him in confidence. Some people you can see you just trust. I told them, hey, I've gone to the hospital, I have COVID, they've not attended to me. So what do I need to do? And a friend of mine told me I need to get all these things. And he told me actually it does work. Even I think I got the last one at that particular chemist. So he gave me that.
Ian, I'm sorry, but I have to stick on this point.
Yes.
You went to a hospital. You told the doctors that you were positive.
Yes.
You were not attended to.
Yes.
You left. And so any kind of medical care that you got was advice that you got from your friends.
Yes.
You went to a pharmacy to get medicine and then you went back home.
Yes.
In my mind, I'm wondering how many more people who then maybe didn't have the advice of friends or anything.
No, it's a lot.
Would have gone through this.
And I remember at that point, there was a lot of confusion around it. And the stigma was just too crazy. The stigma was just too crazy. You can just see guys even just talk about it like it's just too crazy. Even just telling the chemist, at least I think she had dealt, because the way she just attended to me, she was like, she sounded like someone who had dealt with a lot of people in the same situation. Because at that point, hospitals are not had that particular structure in terms of how exactly they're dealing with it. I think testing, most of the hospitals were not doing it, so you had to be sent to either Lancet or I think 1-2 hospitals are doing it. So there was a lot of just confusion. So at that point, you're just relying on information that you've actually had and no one really attended to you. So I remember I did that and then I went back home. I told at least a close friend of mine and I'm still staying alone. So at least I was in quarantine for a couple of days until the situation got a bit worse. Yeah.
It got worse and then what happened?
So I started feeling, like breathing problems.
This was after you'd gone to the pharmacy and got this medication?
Yes.
Okay.
So I started getting the vitamins. Friends of mine did a couple of shopping. They brought it home to me. But something interesting was like a couple of days after I started having breathing problems. Like I used to find I was afraid of sleeping. Like I'll ensure that either I'll sleep but at night I was just afraid of sleeping. So I'll stay up until late. And I felt, one thing, maybe just looking back in retrospect, there's also a lot of, there's more mental. Because at that point you used to hear, when you're young, they say it is for the old people. But I remember one night it was like, because you just check the news, just check out how everything that's going on. Oh, this young guy has died, this young kid has died. So, and I was having, the symptoms were there, but I felt it was more mental. Because it was the stigma around it, you couldn't tell a lot of people, you couldn't announce it. So I started having a lot of breathing problems. I had it for like 2 nights. So the third one I was like, hey, let me just call insurance and see what exactly they can do. Because I remember at that particular point, it was either mandatory isolation and you also to go to the hospital. And most of the time, the ICUs, most of the hospitals were actually just fully checked, as in you couldn't fully booked. So luckily enough, we called insurance and that to make several calls through the morning to look for space. So they got space for me at Avenue Hospital. And then because of what exactly I was feeling at that particular point, and no one can come and check and tell you that probably it was not, your condition was not as bad as compared to other people.
Yeah.
So they sent an ambulance to come pick me up. And that was just the most torrid time. Oh my goodness. I've never been in an ambulance. I've never accompanied someone in an ambulance. So you can try to imagine you calling they had sent the ambulance to come and pick me because you can't drive yourself. They was like, no, you can't drive yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So they had to send the ambulance and then the whole team just I'd given the directions as they walked into the estate and then they'd come all armored with the PPEs. And then it was like, it felt like a military process because they're all armored. They didn't even touch me. It was like, just showed the direction into they closed it for me. I was just alone in the back. And then, that process, with the ambulance going through traffic and all that stuff. So in my mind...
Did you see the neighbors peeping?
Luckily enough, it was around 11, 12, so most of the guys were not there. But the
ambulance
the watchman
did not have
was
the
there.
siren on, and when it came.
When it came, it didn't have the siren. It got the siren when we started moving. But I'd seen the stairs from the watchman and all that stuff because it's like, hey, guys were all armored. The ambulance was there. And then and the interesting thing, when they'd already called the hospital. So getting to the hospital, military process. The reception, like no one touched me. Everybody has a PPE direction. The lift was already open. Someone was picked me up, directed until I got to my bed. As in, so
Well, all right then. So then you got to your bed, and what happened after that? So now you were strapped up to a machine. What happens?
All right.
And
So
how long were you in hospital?
when I got to the hospital, I stayed in bed because the morning rounds they're already done. So in the afternoon labs by the doctor who came was just going all around, just came, checked me, and he considered my situation was mild.
Okay.
That's what exactly she told me, but she did a couple of tests in terms of just checking out how exactly my breathing is. But one of the precaution and gave me a couple of medication. But one of the interesting thing that he did was, or rather one thing that I noticed through that particular process, I remember at night, most of the time guys who were dying because of COVID was because they had a lot of clogging in their lungs. So what she advised was like, because she told me I'm young, I was like, I used to exercise and all that stuff. So I remember that particular night I got an injection. So there's an injection once you have COVID and just prevent you having clogs within your lungs. So they inject you next to your tummy. So to ensure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And considering your situation and the situations of guys I saw at the hospital, they told me that I can get some medication, and if I want, I stayed in the hospital for a night, but they told me that if I feel that I'm a bit upbeat because they saw they don't have any particular clogs. They told me they can actually discharge me, or I can remain in hospital just so that they can get to monitor me, but I can continue my isolation at home. But when I told, there's a friend of mine who I met there is an Indian fellow who had been in the hospital for a week, and he advised me that his condition was worse. And what he told me was that if my lungs are okay and I sort of can breathe better, I just get to discharge myself, because the bill was just another thing. Yes, the insurance was paying. But I'd looked at it just for the night I spent in hospital. One injection, because there's no sort of like medication to it.
Yeah.
They just also gave me the vitamin C's and just checked me. There's now special medication that they give to you. For one, my bill was around 70,000. For one afternoon and night.
For 24 hours.
Yes.
Was it about 24 to 30 hours maximum?
Yes. With one injection and just a couple of
pills. We're counting
pills.
now the PPEs from the ambulance people, the people who have...
The ambulance was not there. Ambulance was separate.
It's a separate bill.
Yes. So the bill was just... I wish I'd come up with it. It was just... I'll send you guys the bill. I was so shocked. The PPEs, I think, just being attended. But we're trying to look at it. There's nothing special that... There's no special attention to it, unless maybe you have breathing problems just on oxygen. But there's no set medication to it, just being monitored. And after my experience, I got to realize that particular experience was more mental than it is physical. And I think because at that particular point, there's a lot of stigma into it, and there's not a lot of awareness as how exactly to deal with it. Because what I got to realize from that particular experience, the most important thing when you have it, even I advise my friends, like, don't have it so much in your mind. Because just a normal occurrence. But the interesting thing is that if you have a pre-existing condition, it can also be bad.
Sure.
Because when I was in hospital, I saw like 2 or 3 guys go, but they were a bit elderly. And I also saw a few young people also just struggle because maybe of pre-existing conditions. And it's just a scary thing though, because I consider if you're in that particular situation and you don't have if you can be checked out and don't have any particular clogging in the lungs, please don't go to hospital. Because I think it also just did a psychological effect
on you.
Yeah, because you're in a ward and the people next to you are struggling. And worse off also because in that particular hospital there's a high dependency. We are in the high dependency unit, but also the guys in special wards because of special cases. And you can see, because it's glass, and you can see someone just all strapped out in terms of all the oxygen and being helped in terms of breathing. I think that caused even much more damage than where exactly I was.
But what did you say that it also helped you to realize that what you are feeling, and when the doctor tells you yours is mild, you could actually also relate?
Yes.
Because you've seen somebody who's worse off.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they're telling you, you can just go back home.
Yeah.
Go and continue with self-isolation at home. Take care of yourself at home. You'd go back home feeling, okay.
Yes.
I am among the few lucky ones who have tested positive, but my condition has not got into that. It could also be the positive side of actually witnessing.
Yes, it was.
The effect of COVID on other people.
Yes. I think even it triggered so many things about my outlook in life after that experience. Because when you're there, in life, I've just come to realize when you're well, you don't see, as in the things in Akusumbua, just the small things. But after that particular experience, you get to realize that some people are just in a bad situation. And something interesting also just happened because we were supposed to So after the hospital, I came back home. I was in self-isolation. My friends were helping me in terms of just doing the shopping and dropping it in my house. Because also at that particular point, friends also have a lot of stigma. They're just there because they're very close. And then something interesting happened about my situation. Because after that, you told you have 14 days. And then after that, you need to go do a retest.
Yeah.
At that point, it was mandatory so that you can just, you show you're negative.
Yeah.
So after the 14 days, I actually stayed until 21 days. I went again to be tested. I was still positive.
21 days later.
21 days later.
Wow.
Wow. So at that particular point now, government called.
Okay. So by then, because if you're looking at July and you're
Yes.
looking about a month later,
Yes.
truth be told, it was around this August time
Yes.
now that the Ministry of Health had actually started saying, we're going to start calling people, especially
Yes.
now when they get this.
Yes.
So, I mean, around that time is when they started doing this. And then around then is also when we saw the suggestions for things like home-based care for
Yes.
cases that were not so serious.
Yes.
So when you did get the call from Ministry of Health, or
Yeah.
rather from
Yeah.
government, what was it that they said to you or asked you?
No, they're just breaking the news to me.
That you got your
Yes, because at that point that changed the protocol. You see, the first time I got tested, it was like, because the company are the one who catered for that particular expense, so they relayed the news, guys from Lancet relayed the news to the head of HR, and then HR called me. So the second time when I went to get tested, I think now the protocol was that you have to relate to the government, and government has to keep track. So someone from the ministry called me and told me, I'm positive again. So I need to again stay... what's it called, under quarantine for another 14 days and then to be tested, which I did. And at this particular point, I was like, it doesn't make sense because the testing is just too expensive. So the ministry were like, if at least for that particular case where you have tested positive for the second time, they're going to cater for it. So I just go to a government clinic and be tested again. And I was tested again and I was positive.
Third time.
Yes. I just at that particular point I was getting pissed off. I was like, what exactly was the problem?
Second test was after 21 days.
Yes.
Third test is after another 21 days.
Yes.
So 42 days later, you are still positive.
Yes.
Okay.
So which was
but at this point, on the 42nd day,
Yes.
are the symptoms as bad as you had them on the first day?
No, things had gone down because I think I had both COVID and pneumonia. So I was taking most of the medication for pneumonia, and also at the same time I was taking the vitamins and the aloe vera and some of the ensuring that just I'm on a very good diet, the vitamin C and all that stuff. So my symptoms had gone down. I just experienced just a bit of tiredness. And
so the fatigue is still there?
The fatigue is still there, but just slightly.
Initially,
it's not
you
as
had a
it
bit
was.
of a chest congestion.
Yes, that was now...
That had cleared.
That had cleared out.
And you never at any point had high fever?
No.
Never at any point had joint aches?
No. So I think I got to realize also the symptoms do vary from person to person.
Yeah, clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was so much, how are you going to feel? I'm feeling like this. Is it COVID? I'm like, it varies from person to person.
Okay.
And then depending on the existing condition that you're in. So I think after I got tested for the third time, it was still positive. The minister told me that, I still wait for another days and then still got to be tested. So like now the fourth time, I was like, I don't want to be tested again. I thought maybe I'm going to live with COVID forever.
Oh, right.
Because it was scary. So the third time I had been told that, I think at that particular point now, they'd done a couple of research and they're saying that for some cases you can be asymptomatic for quite a long period of time and may not clear as fast as it is, but the COVID has cleared. Because after, I remember having a conversation with one of the doctors who's part of one of the clinics, and he's telling me from some of the research, once you've tested positive, after 14 days you don't need to be tested again, because I think after the research it had shown that it's already cleared out, but you may remain asymptomatic. So what at that particular point they were doing was that after 14 days and you had been tested before, they're just writing for you a note that you're actually clear, because so that in case of anywhere that you need to go about it. But I remember she did that to me because that was after my third test. But I decided because friends had pushed me, I'm like, Ian, just get a positive test or just get somewhere else to go tested. But I was like, I'd already tested in a private institution, and government had tested me once, private twice, now government had tested me once, let me try the second time again. I was like, why not? I did it again, positive. I was like, no, I got the letter. So I was told I was positive, but I just had to go tell them, I just had to get the letter, because I realized maybe my condition was more asymptomatic, and maybe it just may stay with you a bit much more longer as compared to somebody else before clearing it.
And also maybe the other effect of the pneumonia as well.
Yes.
Could have had something. So Ian, we thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Since then, up to now, I'm sure you've had, some people who've tested positive.
Yes.
Some who have had mild and other serious conditions, probably. What would you tell our audience this morning, those who are watching us, those who are listening to us, and maybe they are still wondering, What's this whole COVID story?
It's I know guys are usually comparing COVID to a flu, which is just a virus that goes through you. But I think what I'll just tell any person who gets it, first of all, any person within any environment can get any person. No one chooses to have it.
Sure.
So stigma just could be put down. Any person who has it should not be discriminated against, but need to take caution, because I've seen this thing can actually kill people. But if you have it, the first advice I tell someone, just go to the hospital just to be tested just have your lungs be checked out, because of being informed that was actually what kills people. And just take the self-isolation for the period you are in. Take your vitamins. They did help. And the cod liver oil tablets, they did really help in terms of boosting your immunity. And for any person just listening to this, before even you get it, ensure that you just exercise and ensure that your vitals are just working quite well. But that's the only advice. And if you have it, or if you have a pre-existing condition, please take necessary precaution, diabetes, all that stuff. Take extreme precaution, because when it hits you, it really hits hard. And I've seen a couple of people.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
Ian. Ian Dennis is the host of The Business Coach on KTN Home. It comes on which days?
It comes on every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Yes.
On KTN Home.
Yes.
Asante sana, Dennis.
Thank you so much.
And
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you We'll continue the conversation around COVID-19, looking back into 1 year after COVID-19 in the country. At 9 o'clock, we'll be joined by government spokesman, Colonel Cyrus Aguna. All those questions and all those concerns that have been raised about COVID-19 now, even those who are asking, why now when vaccines have come? Why now when the president is about to make an announcement? We'll ask Colonel Cyrus Aguna to explain the why now. However, after this break, let's shift the conversation a little bit and ask ourselves, why is Kenya banning the importation of maize and grain from neighboring countries? Is there a ban? Is there no ban? We'll have a conversation about that. Agri Talk in the next half hour. Good morning, 27 after 8. Time for a break. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive, and of course, SpiceFMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique. The official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be.
There are so many people peddling what is false, and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
he's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Nafande hii umbo yako iko na
nini umba special.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, so we're looking at mostly sunny conditions in Nairobi at 17, highs of 28 and lows of 15 today. Sunny in Nyeri at 16, highs of 26, lows of 13. 13 will also be the low in Nakuru, where it's partly sunny at 17. Sunny conditions in Eldoret at 17, highs of 27 and lows of 13. Sunny in Kisumu at 21, highs of 32. We're looking at highs of 33 in Kakamega. Sunny at 22 right now. 26 in Mombasa, highs of 32 today. 31 will be the high in Malindi. 27 and partly sunny right now. It's 23 and partly sunny in Kampala, highs of 31. Highs of 33 in Dar es Salaam. It's mostly cloudy right now at 27. Johannesburg is sunny at 16, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 32 in Lagos. It's mostly clear right now. Cloudy conditions in Kinshasa at 24. We'll see highs of 32. And it'll come back down to lows of 24. badly this morning on Mombasa Road out by the SGR. It slows down a little bit as you pass that and past Cabanas. You should be all right. Getting towards Bellevue, though, it will slow down some as you get to the stadium roundabout. Coming out of industrial area, roads still under construction. Kenha is positive that this won't last too long. All right, folks heading out of the city today on... going past Kangemi out towards Limu, that slows down a little bit, but nothing too crazy. So traffic seems to have behaved overall very good, very well this morning. We'll keep looking out for those spots. Let us know if you run into one. I don't think we should. Hopefully not. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let us know via text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
To 9 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues right here on Spice FM, KTN Home and online. With you this morning is Ndu Oko and Eric Latif. Our colleague, C.T. Muga, is away. He's on a break. He's enjoying himself. He's resting. Now, maize, staple food.
In Kenya.
Maize import, business. And this is something that we see every year. Farmers in the country, they produce maize. They want to sell maize to the government through NCPB. They want to dictate the price of maize. NCPB wants to dictate the price of maize. Politics wants to dictate the price of maize. And then at some point we see imports. Do we have sufficient maize that has been produced in the country? Do we have cheaper maize that's available from neighboring countries? What's the cost of production of maize in this country? What's the cost of production of maize in neighboring countries? This is a conversation that happens all the time. And whenever we have this talk, Agri-Talk, in the Situation Room, where we promote meaningful discourse on agriculture, food security and agribusiness, we've talked about grain for a while. Now, recently, we saw the authority that's in charge of food security in Kenya, and this is the agriculture and food. In fact, there's also, they put the award fisheries at some point, I don't know when.
Yes, somewhere.
Agriculture, food, fisheries authority. They had issued an instruction that said, ban the importation of maize from neighboring countries, specifically Tanzania and Uganda. And there had been various concerns about this, so the presence of aflatoxin in the grain. Is that good enough or not? There was a lot of pushback and outcry from the traders who were saying, come on, we have already made our orders, we're already moving this. And then the government seems to have buckled under pressure. And the cabinet secretary in charge of agriculture, who's in charge of this AFA, comes out and says, no. This issue has been taken out of context. What we want is the directive was meant to safeguard consumers through tightening of safety measures and not a blanket ban on maize imports from the region. What he said, C.S. Munya, was, when we regulate imports, we are putting in place safety measures. Even the food that we produce must be subjected to processes that conform with public health and food safety standards. So he was saying, we have not banned the importation of maize from these two countries. What we're just saying is that we want strict enforcement of regulatory measures to make sure that this grain is actually safe for consumption before we allow it into the market. So it had been taken out of context. Do you think it's being taken out of context? Do you think it's people overreacting, or do you think it's actually pressure from interested quarters that said, you can't ban importation right now?
Well, I mean, if you ban importation, what do? Is that you essentially, right now, look at it, you essentially take a cheaper option out of the market. And what are people crying for right now?
Yep.
In as much as there's protectionism that needs to be applied when it comes to Kenya's indigenous farmers and business owners in that way, what you're essentially doing is that you're removing a cheaper option from the market. Because let's just be honest, anything that's coming from the neighboring countries right now at this moment is cheaper. And we've seen the reasons for that. That the source that your agricultural materials, your inputs are much cheaper in other countries. That one we can't deny. So by the time you put it all together, even to bring it into the country is much cheaper than what is locally available. So with the ban right now, who's going to cry at the end of the day? The Kenyans who are purchasing these items. So with that ban, you remove a cheap option for people, and you're going to force them to stick with the more expensive option.
But
if
with
you just
that
want to
ban,
look at it on the face of it.
If you just want to look at it from
like
that
that,
face.
yes.
But also maybe with the strict enforcement of regulations, you are actually safeguarding your citizens.
Whereas you could also be making sure that the government makes this environment for business conducive. It is possible to lower the elements that make these resources so expensive. It is possible to regulate in that manner. Whereby I do agree 100% that we should do all that we can to protect our local farmers. At the same time, we should also be doing a lot more to make sure that the inputs that they have to bring in are affordable. They don't just cry because there's competition from outside. They also cry because their profit margins are so low because they have to put in so much to get this yield. So there's two things that can be done here.
Let's bring in a guest, and this is somebody who understands the agricultural landscape in Kenya very well, not just in Kenya, but in the region. He's the Regional Director for Syngenta Foundation, George Osure. He's with us on the line. George, good morning. Good morning to you all, and happy to join you.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room, and thank you very much for joining us. So, George, you know what has been happening, the recent debacle about maize imports from the regional neighbors. If we were to talk about that whole issue of the imports from neighboring countries, first of all, why is it that you'd find food from Tanzania, food from Uganda being cheaper than food being produced locally? Why?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And one of the reasons for that is the nature and style of farming. Mm-hmm. And that is basically the agricultural practices. We have certified seed is what most of our farmers use. And to produce certified seed, there are costs related to that. And there are what we call open pollinated varieties, which are called standard varieties. Those ones are the ones which are much cheaper to produce. And their costs of regulation are very different. Now, that's one side of it. The second side of it is that the cost of labor here in Kenya, in our maize producing areas, is much higher because of our much higher levels of mechanization. In those other areas, there's a lot more that is done with lower cost labor. So as an opener, I don't know where that places the conversation. Thank you.
When you say that there's a cost variation, it sounds that on the one hand, you're saying that it's because of advantage of our advancement in agricultural practice that our costs are expensive. Or on the other hand, it's because of not proper advancement of agricultural practice that is making our food more expensive. Which is which? I'm still confused.
It's a combination of the two. Because when you are growing maize, one of the challenges in growing maize is that, without going into the very high technical details, is you need material or fertilizer to strengthen the root, and the root propagation to absorb the nutrients from the soil. So if your soils are acidic, I don't want to go into the very high level details, that reduces it, and that reduces the growth of the plant, and that reduces your yield.
Yeah.
But on the other side, if you are growing it in an area whereby it is new, it has not been farmed for too long, like in some parts of East Africa, that again changes the gross margin, which is the cost right from plowing right to harvesting. The third part of it is that our agriculture is a lot more advanced, and the farmers are looking at much higher levels of input quality. So at the moment, as we speak now, there are newer varieties of maize seed that will come into the market that are tolerant and speak towards fall armyworm. So those are issues that are different in the different parts of the region or in East Africa.
Well, even if you have these new variations that come about and you have greater technological advances when it comes to then agriculture, at the same time, we still have things like shortages. And then we still have the option of bringing in maize from other countries where people are looking to buy food and they cannot. And the option that comes along is something that comes from outside the country. How do you balance the two? Even if
Yes,
we have these technological advances, we still have the option of we have a cheaper option coming from outside the country. When people are thinking about what they're going to buy to put on their table, they're not thinking about the technology. They're thinking about the availability and also the affordability.
Very important point you raised, affordability. And the point we are mentioning here is something called the neighborhood effect, as the economists call it. And that is that if you look at the maize calendar across East Africa, by June, you are harvesting in the western part of Kenya, in Uganda. And as you approach towards September, you are going towards the eastern part of Kenya. So up to Meru and the Central Highlands. So that is also another challenge. That point is that the person who has maize in June is ready. The manufacturer, the feed processor here requires the feed. He doesn't have local food. So you are speaking on to the challenges of balancing the two. I don't know if that is clear enough. That calendar is also very critical in sales. That's a very critical part of it.
So how does that roll over into the neighboring countries, as you're saying, the neighborhood effect?
Yes, what happens is now they harvest earlier than us, and the introduction, they had a lower production cost. So naturally, because manufacturing here has got very tight margins, then we have, or processing here has very tight margins, then therefore there's the natural attraction towards importation.
Right.
That's the way I'd put it.
So what we are witnessing now, where there's a lot of imports coming in from those neighboring countries, this is Tanzania and Uganda, and getting to a point where the FAA is concerned about the safety of this grain. What does the regulation framework look like in terms of ensuring that, yes, you can import, but we have got to check that it is safe for consumption?
That's a very good point, and it's that's a very specialized part of the process, and that's why we have the labs, and we have actually very elaborate legal framework which subjects the crops or whatever we are importing or exporting out of the country to minimal levels. I don't have the figures right now offhand. Now that is where the challenge comes in, because a little bit of mishandling can create that challenge. The second part of it is that knowing that you will potentially have that, and I use the word knowing very carefully because that's a knowledge dissemination issue, is that the farmers don't know that if they mixed their seed in advance with something called aflasif, you would not have that problem in the beginning. And then you have a proper storage mechanism. So it's a lot of convening factors. I'd call them their points of convergence at every point in the growing period.
Okay. So now with these calls to ban or not to ban, what do you think would be the best? What are we looking at now in terms of options? Should we ban exports from other countries in terms of maize, when, in my opinion, certain things that should be done on this side are not being done? One, protectionism when it comes to then farmers and, protection of prices and things like that, protection of the business. On the other hand, doing everything possible to make sure that the inputs are as affordable as possible for farmers. Should we then go ahead and ban these imports from other countries?
That's a very good question and a very big challenge to the policymakers, because one of the issues that comes about is the minute you react to, because of an issue like aflatoxin to another country, they will also react by saying, we won't touch any of your products, something you've manufactured. That's the normal reaction in world trade and internationally. So one of the starting point is a conversation which I believe should be held the year before for next year, so that these issues can be lifted off. And the important people who need to be involved in this conversation are the processors. If you look at the way maize is processed, it requires a certain moisture content. The farmers know how to measure that moisture content by just feeling it. But the specialists use lab materials, so there's that gap. So there'll be a small 0.2% or very tiny percentage that can create the rejection.
Yeah.
And the same happens with export. So it's something that should be done if you can look at it in the form of a forward market contract, looking ahead, not today. Because if you have to be careful, because right now, some of that maize may have been paid for last year.
Yeah.
Grow for me this year. So how do you handle such contracts? Those are the challenges that comes in. But at the same time, when you look at the way agriculture standards are positioned, they've got a bit of latitude, and the similar and nutrition, because it's human life, the latitude is very limited. It's either yes or no almost. I'm just putting it. I'm not a medical person. So I'd put it that way, very generally.
So how then do you enforce this? And I hear what you're saying. If you have a conversation a year before at the point of getting into planting between the processor who's going to offtake from the farmer and the farmer, where does the government come in? Because the government is one that's supposed to protect me as a consumer at the end of it all. Where does the government come in to ensure that what you guys have agreed as a business entity is fine, but what crosses the border shall be safe?
Good point. And I think that speaks to the point of registration of importers. So that registration is similar to the way we I'd compare it to the way we register seed merchants in this country. So seed merchants are registered so that it's predictable and the intellectual property is protected. So if we register the importers, and the importers can demonstrate to government, this is a very personal view, that have already done so much. And I think the critical element would be, what actions have you taken towards drying the maize effectively, storage, and within your growing gross margin? Can you demonstrate that your point of contact, who is growing for you, who is your outgrower, is using all methods possible, including specialized chemicals to protect against aflatoxin? I think we would get there.
And then what would then at that point, the AFA, for example, this Agriculture Food Authority, is looking at making sure that what is coming into the country is safe. If it detects that there's a growing percentage of the imports crossing through the border that are not safe, should it issue a blanket ban and say, first of all, stop all imports for X number of days as we test? Or should it be having a conversation and saying, you know what, politically, like those things that you said, the dynamics that come into it, it could affect our trade relations with our neighbor? What should it do, and what trumps the other in terms of interests?
Okay, I don't have the act that governs the operations within AFA, but what happens with some of these things is always, even the way we are talking here, is the modern style of communication, the way you do it. It gives the opportunity to the other person also to react and to see and tell you, by the way, yes, I have this problem, or could you allow for this? There's that conversation. That's what I mean. And that's one. The second part of it is, as we look at the issues that are raised by an instant ban, it could also be part of it is naturally, and they must look after it. I use the word must with an underline about public health and quality of food. But on the other side is they also need to bring in the manufacturers, the processors, the Millers Association of Kenya to ensure that there are no production gaps which will raise prices, like I think in the introduction we were talking about. Those gaps are the ones which jack up the prices. So it's a very difficult situation, and it needs a quick and a very efficient reaction. So I think it's more of a communication style and the timing of the communication. That's where I'd look at it. Yes.
I mean, obviously, if we look at the sector as a whole now, obviously it's one that needs massive interventions to kind of curb these problems that have befuddled it for the last, I don't know how many years. And there's certain things that need to be done. And if we just look at trade across the borders, that's one huge issue. But what do you think are some of the basic issues that need to be tackled before we even graduate to some of these ones? Because it would seem that once we say stop trade of this particular commodity, if there is a threat, it looks like there are very many other steps that we have not gone through before we can do that on its own. So what do you think? What do you see now are some of the issues that need to be tackled and need to be tackled now before we get to the point where you can say now there's a good flow within the entire system?
Yeah, very good question, because one of the biggest challenges the farmers had, and I think I alluded to it briefly, is information, the quality and the nature of information they get in the region. And this has come about because of extension services and the type of extension services we have. So one of the aspects, if you look at the way I'll just talk about maize and the way maize seed is registered today, if SpiceFM becomes a maize merchant, one of the questions you'll be asked is, do you have people in the field who can talk about this maize? That's essentially what it asks you, is one of the boxes you have to tick. The second part of it is, once we have done that, something that has quietly come about and is now creating a lot of interest in the private sector and in the growers' world is CALRO, the Livestock Research Organization. And across the regions, most of them have the same, NARO in Uganda and TARI in Tanzania. They have what you call soil survey maps. They tell you what is appropriate for what area. So you might be able to grow cassava here, maize here, and so on. That's the second part of it. The third part of it is that soil survey map and the details behind it are the ones which enable you to select fertilizer and with the appropriate timing of maize. So just to sort of help out, to emphasize is that you can have 4 packets of maize in front of you.
Yeah.
One can only grow at a certain altitude towards the coast. The next one would grow in the central, in the eastern area. The next one will grow in the central highlands. The next one requires very heavy rainfall. So that is the information the farmers would know, because the farmers who grow maize at scale know that, but the ordinary farmers don't have that idea. And the last part of it is the drier areas don't have these problems a lot because they are hot and dry, so the maize dries up quicker.
Yeah.
So that's why there's more investment in eastern Kenya now than towards the western. So there's a lot of issues.
George Osure, we thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insights. George is the Regional Director for Syngenta Foundation. Now, Syngenta is known as a global giant when it comes to agriculture. But what is the Syngenta Foundation? What do you do as we conclude?
Yes, thank you very much. The Syngenta Foundation is an organization that is the philanthropic arm of the Syngenta, the business. But the interesting part of it is, by regulation, because it's headquartered in Switzerland, we do not propagate the aspects required or the business requirements of Syngenta, the business. Our role and my role in the region has been to disseminate knowledge and technology. Knowledge and technology means we've been able to bring in new seed varieties. We've been able to support maize lethal necrosis by contributing to a center in Naivasha. We've been able to bring in, together with the Soya Innovation Labs in the US, new varieties of soybean that are under trial. Some have been adopted. So there's that element we do. That's one side. The second side we do is to support small agricultural businesses to grow. So there are farms in Rift, Northern Upper Rift, which are in Trans Nzoia, who are now sharing part of their land as part of crop rotation between beans and maize, and growing bean seed and selling to farmers in Bungoma, in Busia, and so on. So that's the kind of work we do. And lastly, apart from that, we support government and associations with specialist personnel from across the world to solve technical issues.
In other words, George, you are a knowledge hub. Thank you very much. We hope to tap into your knowledge in coming days again. George Osure, Regional Director, Syngenta Foundation. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Nice.
And time for us to take a break again on KTN Home, 4 minutes to 9. This conversation continues on Spice FM. In the next hour, we have a conversation with government spokesman Colonel Cyrus Aguna as we commemorate 1 year since the first COVID-19 case was detected in the country. We'll ask him a number of questions and we want you to tune in. Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi. If you're in Mombasa, you can tune in on 87.9. Kisumu is 102.5. Nakuru 96.0. 96.7 in Eldoret. Nyeri is 90.9 and Malindi 97.7. You can now switch from TV onto FM. Good morning. It's 4 minutes to 9.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM, Nyeri.
You know, the thing is, there's so much knowledge in the agricultural sector, both in the Ministry of Agriculture and the various state departments, in all the other agricultural organizations. CalRO is one of them. The AFA is basically, has very many knowledgeable people. If you look at now, organizations such as the Syngenta Foundation and others, there's so much knowledge in agriculture in the country that if all those people brought their heads together and they said, let's look at, for example, addressing cost of production, what is it that the government can do in terms of policy, in terms of legislation, in terms of enforcement, it can actually happen. We can have the cheapest food.
Absolutely.
We can have the best soils.
With the best technological advances, all of that can happen.
It just needs to, people just need to do what they're supposed to do at all levels. And then we'd get to that point where food is cheap, food is always available. The issue of food and nutrition security would not even be an issue that we discuss for a very long time, because we'd be knowing that whatever part of the country you go to, there's food that comes from that part. Because we know what can grow in the lower parts, what can grow in the middle parts, what can grow in the highlands, what can grow in the northern highlands, what can grow in the arid and semi-arid, what can be produced from there. If it's livestock, we have all this information.
Yep. Can be done.
Yep. So the next hour, we're going to have a conversation with Colonel Cyrus Aguna and all these questions that needs to be asked. Already people are asking. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Colonel Cyrus Aguna, please, Spice FM KE on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter is where you can post. And for example, the people are asking. So one thing that we want him to tell us is, how come we see spikes when the president is about to review measures? Why do we see this? What's that coincidence? Is there science to this madness? Another one is all those measures that have been put in place. The effect, for example, the positive effect of the curfew that has been there since March last year up to now. You cannot be out at midnight. You're not allowed to by law. So how has that helped us as a people? Has there been anything positive?
Interesting question too. Absolutely.
What has come out of that in terms of fighting COVID-19? So some of these questions are what we're going to be asking Colonel Cyrus Aguna in the next hour, and we want to hear from you as well as you ask the questions. Spice FM KE on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Post your questions there. At some point during the conversation, we'll open up the phone lines so you can have a chat with him directly. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. It's now coming up to 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so it's not so bad right around now. Trying to get into the city, not too much of an issue. Outbound traffic, there's quite some today, but having come off Thika Road into the city looks good. On Mombasa Road, a little bit of traffic, of course, considering the construction, but will not be too bad from here moving on out, guys. Is there something I'm missing? Let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. We'll look in about half an hour and see how the roads look like. Just in case, let us know as well via text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your...
The conversation continues right here on the Situation Room on SpiceFM and online. With you this morning is Eric Latif and Ndu Oko.
Yes.
C.T. Muga is there.
He's hovering.
At home. Chilling. Today's proverb: when a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. When a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. That's it.
I thought about it, like, even when you're annoyed with somebody, right? You don't just blow their entire character to smithereens. That one thing that you're annoyed about, stick to that, right? As opposed to blowing the whole thing, killing a mosquito with a grenade.
Don't get historical.
Exactly.
Remember, even last year, this is the same thing that
you did this. No. Issue at hand, deal, let's move.
Yeah. Is this about today or is this about my whole life?
Exactly. Is it about today or, like, you know, the last 25 years? What are we doing? What do I need to be sorry for?
Yeah, exactly. You know? And then at that point where you say, makosa imetendeka. It's okay, I'm sorry, let's move on. Don't say now because you've done this, now we're all...
And this, and this, and this. Okay, which one?
Surely. Okay. Today is one day to the anniversary of the first year of COVID-19 in the country.
Kenya.
Friday 13th, 2020. Today is Friday 12th, 2021. Last year, it was a Friday, the government, led by Cabinet Secretary for Health, accompanied by Cabinet Secretaries for Interior, Fred Matiang'i, for Information, for Tourism, for Transport, even Defense was there, even
Everybody
Foreign
was
Affairs was there. They came to announce that the first case of COVID-19 in the country has been confirmed. They said the patient is stable. It's somebody who had flown into the country, Kenyan, flown into the country from the US via the UK, had gone to their place where they lived, and then they developed symptoms and they went to get tested, and the tests turned back positive. And from that point on, it was a Friday. The next thing that happened was the president now had a national address at the steps of Harambee House on the Sunday, said, we're going to close schools. And then he said, we'll start with closing universities, and then we'll go into the other schools. And then he said, we're also going to start minimizing places of worship and how many people attend the places of worship. But they were just told, you churches and religion and places of worship, look at how you can implement these modalities.
Yes.
Remember, immediately, religious leaders did not say, stop coming to church. They said, you can come so we can pray and, wish COVID away.
Away. Pray it away, yes.
And the reaction from the people was clear that, you know what, no. And so the government had to come in and now say, all right, we've had a conversation again, this time involving religious leaders, and we have also said that no, even places of worship.
Shut.
So we went to a point of shutdown, incremental shutdown, and there was a lot of fear and, lack of awareness by very many people. And that's when the government also came in, and the media, through the Media Owners Association, there was the donation in kind in terms of how much airtime was being dedicated to create awareness about COVID, what COVID is and what you need to do. And that information was all out there. 1 year down the road, we have seen 1,889 people have died, more than 100,000 people tests positive.
Yeah.
We have seen people who have come out to say, I got tested, I got positive, I have recovered. We have seen people who have passed away, and their testimony is all out there for people to see. But as we look at all this, the lessons that we learn out of this and what we can then take going forward are very many. That the government, when it wants to, it can do something. And it always wants to. But it does not always go ahead and do everything that it wants to do. Then the people sometimes do not listen to the government.
What the government is saying.
What the government
do
is saying.
this.
The people will hear the government, the people will not listen.
The people will hear the government and decide to go in a totally different direction. Should they wish on that day?
Oh, yes.
Right.
The people also do not have 100% trust on everything the government says. The first time COVID was announced in the country, people were like, wanataka pesa. Now we are being told we're into a third wave. People are like, third wave, Is the president supposed to be giving us an announcement on Friday? And now we have third wave. Right. There are people within this republic who always do not believe. There are those who are still, those who actually have known that there's COVID. They accept that there's COVID, but they still question what the government is doing. So we have very many questions, and the person to answer them is the spokesman of the government. And this is retired Colonel Cyrus Aguna, who joins us now on the line. Good morning, Colonel.
Good morning to you, Mr. Eric and Sister Undu. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad that you're having me on the show today.
Karibu sana, and like we said, we'll be having you regularly because the government needs to talk to the people, and the people need to give feedback to the government.
Certainly, yes.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation yesterday, Colonel, and we were looking at the effect of COVID-19 in the country. And we were asking ourselves, so what is it that we need to do now that we are in the third wave of COVID-19? What can we do so that we do not have severe effects of COVID in this third wave? And people called in. There were those that were saying, yes, we need to take personal responsibility. There are those that were saying the government needs to enforce the measures that are already in place strictly. Those that were saying our leaders need to be leaders and not behave as if they come out of Mars. And then there were those that were asking, what on earth are you talking about, a third wave? This is a ploy by the government just to cook up numbers because the president should be lifting the curfew on Friday. Let's start by responding to those that I've just mentioned last. Those that think this new wave that you guys are talking about is just a creation because there's something that you're after.
Obviously, there'll be always skeptics who must in a society. And this is not anything new because even when the first case was recorded, the index case, there are those who still believe that this was a ploy by the government to get money from the world. The skeptics will always be there. So this is not anything that you can say is very new. But what we as a government must continue to do is continue to provide information, accurate information to our people every single time, be in the hope that once they get to hear more of the same thing over and over again, they'll begin to believe in. Because the reality is this, that, I think this is the only time in a long time that we have over 90 people in the ICU. And for only one disease, not 2 or 3 or 4, just one. And I think maybe this perhaps compared to another time in the past, you can only compare it maybe to 1998 bomb blast when there are so many people in the ICU at the same time. These are not figures the government is cooking. These are figures that can be authenticated. They are rare. They are real. So when people are saying that the government is not necessarily coming out clean, but just a ploy, then certainly those are, you can say, they're Thomases. Yes.
There's also the question of responsibility and the messaging that has been coming from government in terms of, Kenyans taking responsibility for their actions when it comes to COVID. What is the message, loud and clear, from the government today as far as COVID is concerned and what
the
Kenyans
first thing that we have to do is this. We have the vaccine now, but we have said time and time again that this is not the silver bullet. It's just one of the many measures that must be put together to limit infection, and if you get it, to reduce the severity of the infection. I'm saying this because many of our people, are out, in this false sense of security. But now that the vaccine is here, and it's high time for us to be able to, throw everything to the window and get back to our normal life the way it was before COVID. But that is not the case. And therefore, as government, we will continue to ask our people to continue to obey the containment measures, because this is the only way as of now, because COVID has got no cure. The only way that you can be able to cure yourself from getting infected. Vaccine is just one of the measures to prevent getting infection. If you get it, to reduce the severity. But the other message is this, that personal health begins with the individual himself or herself. Mm-hmm. Not just personal health. Let me just go a step further and say even personal security begins with the individual himself or herself. The government will come in after the first level has failed, meaning that you have failed, to be able to obey protective measures that have been put in place. If the malaria, if whatever kind of disease that is out there, all right? So what we must and we will continue to do as government is to communicate to our people two messages. Obey the containment measures have been put forward by the government, but at the same time, take individual responsibility to ensure that you, as much as possible, avoid getting infected. But should you get infected, then you've got facilities to be able to attend to you.
Mm. But then there's a whole big issue here of the government saying something, preaching water and drinking wine. And this is those who work for the government and those who work in government. So the question comes up on when you see political leaders from the president to the deputy president to cabinet secretaries to the former prime minister, when you see such high-level political leaders not basically following the same and observing the same protocols, then what is the message to the people?
Indeed, there has been a challenge that you have to concede. But then, like to go back to what I said earlier on, that there is this aspect of individual responsibility. You are not really, forced to go into those rallies. You go there because you want to go. If there are no people going to these rallies, even the politicians will not be holding these rallies. And therefore, it goes back to the individual responsibility that I must be aware and conscious about my own personal security and personal health. Mm-hmm. And that is my number one responsibility. And to the extent that I'm going to go into a rally, I'm going there because I want, not because anybody forces me. So the government will continue to ask people to be, very responsible, to be concerned about their individual responsibility and exercise individual responsibility as much as possible.
Mm. Can we actually ban these rallies? Is it possible to have something very clear coming out from government in terms of communication and saying that they've been banned?
But the government initially did put mechanisms and measures. What the government did mention is that any rally, any gathering must not exceed 1/3 of the capacity of that facility. That has always been the case. However, with regard to whether it can be banned totally, of course, there is NAC, the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus, that is assessing the situation as it's developing. So should it recommend that they all be banned in totality, then, of course, that decision will be made upon, a recommendation by NAC, in that committee.
Okay. All right. So as you had mentioned, and as we all know, the vaccines are here. In terms of communication, coming out very clearly, in terms of what is going to happen or when others will be expected, on whose shoulders does that rest? Coming out of your office, Colonel Ogun.
The responsibility with regards to the rollout of the vaccine, how it will be done, the various mechanics and methodology of doing it, rests on the task force on coronavirus. I'm a member of the task force.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the information right now as we are dealing with first batch? We're just dealing with frontline workers. Kenyans are asking at this point also then timelines in terms of what we're looking at to be able to start with the rest of the population.
Yes. And this information has been given out not just once, many times, even before vaccines arrived here. But the first batch of the vaccine that we already now have in the country will be targeting those who are in the front line. these are the healthcare workers, these are the teachers, these are the soldiers, and security personnel. And this will go on until sometime the end of June. That is 30th of June. That is the first phase.
Okay.
Then the second phase will come in thereafter. We have got 1,020,000 vaccines that are in the country right now, and that can only be able to vaccinate about 500,000 people. So we have more than 500,000 of our people within that first, cohort that I've just mentioned. So that will not be enough to vaccinate all of them. And therefore, we're expecting a second, batch to come in to be able to be used to vaccinate those who will have spilled over, those who not have been vaccinated in the first phase, within the same first cohort. Whatever left of us now will now go into the cohort of those who are 50 and above and also have got other underlying issues. We're looking at sometime in July, going forward to December there. Now, the projection is that by the next 18 months, about 40 or 50% of the countries have been vaccinated.
Okay.
Yes.
When it comes to the issue of vaccine, Colonel, and we have discussed this on the show many times, and we ask ourselves, when we first started witnessing coronavirus around the world, the government was very proactive in sharing information about COVID. What is COVID? How do you get COVID? How can you prevent yourself from getting COVID? When it comes to the vaccine, and you've seen this is not just unique to Kenya, globally, there have been very many conspiracy theories that have come out about the vaccine. And a lot of misinformation then has been spread to the public about the vaccine. Should it not be the work of the government, and especially your office as government spokesman, to make sure that there is proper awareness creation on what the vaccine is, what the vaccine does, what, for example, efficacy means when it's 60%, what does it mean when you get the vaccine? Should this information not have been there in the public from, let's say, the beginning of this year as you are gearing towards receiving the vaccines in the country?
But you see, this information really it's based on also what you're getting from the other development agencies that we work with. This vaccine is something that has not been manufactured here locally, and therefore the information that we are relaying to people is also information that we have been able to get from other development partners who have been, those who were able to develop this vaccine. So whenever we get this information, we also do the needful to communicate it to our people. So we have been able to give out sufficient information as and when we receive it, for people to get to know the efficacy of this vaccine, what are the side effects that should be expected. But I do agree that there are lots of, skeptics out there, there are myths out there about this vaccine, and that is not unexpected. This is because, in my view, that we are dealing with a completely new pandemic. Pandemic that not many people have got a lot of information about. The scope of knowledge about this pandemic is still very limited. And then bring in a vaccine that is equally new in the market with not so much information about it. So then you have a cocktail of uncertainties regarding an issue that there's not so much information about. So when people are skeptics, it's not because they just don't want, because the information available is still very limited. We as government will try as much as possible to keep giving out information that is accurate as and when we receive it, from our development, but even from our own experiences as a country. And I trust that increasingly the misinformation will begin to disappear and more people will come forward to be vaccinated when the time comes.
You say you've been giving out all this information to the public, and you actually use the word sufficiently. What channels have you been using to spread this information about the about vaccination?
We have a variety of channels. First of all, there is the Ministry of Health website that we've been using to communicate about vaccine, our own government spokesperson website, about our social media pages, about the details of the vaccine. We've also been using press conferences about this vaccination. Now, going to the grassroots level, we have also been able to utilize local administration infrastructure to be able to communicate the same. And luckily enough, the Ministry of Health has got community health volunteers who are the structures on the ground and as far as health is concerned, and they have been also communicating the same. So there are several layers that have been used to be able to ensure that this information cascades down to the grassroots.
Okay. If you look at the year that has passed, would you change the kind of communication or the way in which certain things were communicated as concerns COVID from the first time it got into the country until now? Would you change anything?
Well, let me put it this way. Every situation is a learning situation. Even, perhaps allow me to digress just a little bit. We are in the first phase of local investment. And trust me, the way it's not first phase, but second phase. And the way we are dealing with the second phase is much different from the way we dealt with the first phase, because there are lessons we learned from the first phase that we have brought to bear in the second phase. And indeed, even this coronavirus that has come as a pandemic, perhaps it's the only pandemic that this country is dealing with largely, for now, if you compare it probably to HIV and AIDS, even in the early days of HIV and AIDS, things were more or less the same.
Yeah.
So it took a bit of time for information to begin to sink in. And therefore, I'm thinking that we may be too hard on ourselves. We have only been with coronavirus for about a year, going to a year and 2 months now. But perhaps going forward another, 1 year and a half, 2 years, we'll be in a much, much better place. Because every day we are learning and every day we're making adjustments. Yes.
I want to come back on the issue of information, especially information about vaccine. We had a conversation with the Doctors Union Secretary General, Chibanzi Mochonda. And he's saying, first of all, the union completely and 100% supports the vaccination exercise. But the concern that the doctors and the other medics have had is that they haven't had information channels opened between government and them on the rollout of this vaccine. So that they can then become the frontline ambassadors of vaccination in the country.
There is a task force on the deployment of vaccine in the country.
Yep.
That task force has got various stakeholders, and among them are the doctors. Because indeed, there must be infrastructure to help in the rollout, of that vaccine in all our health facilities in the country. And they have been, incorporated into that architecture. Because then without the doctor, they don't have to be it doesn't have to be the doctors' union per se. There are doctors all over the country who are, part of the infrastructure to be able to ensure that this vaccine is administered in the way that it is meant to be administered, and that the right people are able to get it when they need it. So there is a plan that has been rolled out, that's currently, being implemented to ensure that there is information going out, there is training going out, and there is also administration of the vaccine that is currently being given to our people.
Indeed, that is true. And I think where the challenge comes, Colonel, is on the issue of inclusivity. So that you want to make sure that any process is as inclusive as possible, that it cascades, and when it's cascading, you are factoring in inclusivity. So there are doctors, yes, who of course are in the task force on a vaccination rollout. But those doctors, are they communicating to the other bodies of doctors? Have they been made aware that they need, first of all, to communicate with the other bodies of doctors? We have spoken to the leadership of Kenya Medical Association, leadership of the Clinical Officers Union, the Nurses Union. These are the doctors, dentists, and pharmacists. None of them has been approached.
I hear you, Eric. I hear you, Eric. But also, I'm asking you to understand what I'm saying. There is a task force whose role is to look out how this vaccine can be effectively deployed in the country. That task force is led by Dr. Awale. Now, the task force has got other stakeholders. Now, these stakeholders are doctors who are also part of the task force. But the task force cannot be the one to administer the vaccine across the country. And therefore, there are doctors who are in that chain from when the vaccines arrive into the various, stores in the regional stores, and down up to the, DCC, that is the, deputy county, areas. Let me just call it, sub-county areas. So when they get there, that whole chain, there are people, and all these people are doctors, and they're members of that union. So they are all incorporated into this architecture. So there's nobody that has been left out. This is a pandemic. Every resource must be brought on board. Every skill that can help must be brought on board.
Colonel, I understand what you're saying, but very specifically, what they've said is that in terms of even the vaccine, because they will be the ambassadors for this vaccine in this country. And we're speaking about people who spoke to us directly, specifically from the union.
Yes.
And they're saying that they've not even been educated or informed on, number one, the adverse effects, on how it's going to be rolled out in the country. Though they are very willing to, to put forward their hand and say, okay, how do we go about this? Or can you share this information with us? But they've not been told about exactly how all of this works. They've not been given the information, and this was something that they were crying about even before the vaccines got into the country.
But let me ask you, Madam Undu, how would that be if they're the ones who are training other doctors? How would that be? Because doctors must be trained by other doctors, training of trainers who have been given training, and then they train the others. So when you talk about informed about the side effects of this, vaccine, but what are they training the other doctors on? So this training is going on and is being carried by the same doctors, right? And they have been given training at the national levels to become the training of trainers at the grassroots level, the county level. So they are all involved. Perhaps what they would say that they have not maybe been incorporated as KNPDU, but they are doctors. The doctors who are in this architecture are members of the same union.
Okay.
So how would you explain that gap? Because there is clearly a gap.
There is no gap, because there is really no gap, honest. I don't see a gap. I don't know why you're talking about. I don't see any myself.
Let me show you where I see my gap. The gap that I see here is that there are many doctors who have not yet received information regarding the rollout of the vaccine. Number one, and this is when this vaccine is going to arrive in your area of jurisdiction, what is going to happen about it? What information will you then be able to share with the patients that you see on a daily basis if they ask you any questions about the vaccine? This information has not reached very many pockets of doctors, even some of them who go onto social media and they are sending other information.
Eric, what you're saying, perhaps in a, I don't know which world we will be talking to, but even when we had the Constitution, it did not get to every village, every home. What I'm saying is this. The task force on deployment of this vaccine will send out information to regional quarters, sub-regional, headquarters, down to the grassroots. Then it is your responsibility to get it from there. We will not go to every individual doctor to give them leaflets or copies. It is them. These things are in the website. This is an era of technology. So really, when you're saying that they have not been, information is everywhere. I am not a doctor, but I have the information. I trust they should also be having it.
So you're saying that they should take an active role in going out to find it and not wait for it to come to them. It should not come to them.
It has gone to them, and it's gone to them in this sense. Please, there's a circular given out. This information has been sent on the website of Ministry of Health, and it also sent to your various, either sub-county headquarters or county headquarters. Please check it out.
Okay.
In case you've got any queries, ask. So that is a way of communicating. So when they say that they've been left out, really, unless they want to go back to those archaic days where everything has to be in hard copy.
All right.
Maybe, especially for the next cohort of people who you expect to start vaccinating from between July and December, those aged 50 and above. So, for instance,
I didn't pick that.
I'm talking about now the next cohort of people who will get the vaccination after this first group of the frontline workers.
Yes, the frontline, the old people and stuff.
The old people. Have those people been mapped? For example, is my mother, who is 75 years old, on a list? And how does she get the information of when she'll get vaccinated?
We have everything mapped out. And let me tell you what. Every information regarding where all these old people, 50 and above, is available. And I tell you what, we have got even those who are beyond 50, who are in 70s, going like your grandfather, grandmother.
Yeah.
Because we give them Inua Jamii.
Yes.
Inua Jamii program, he or she is part of that.
Yes.
So we have all this information. Now, also, in every health facility, most of these old people visit health facilities. So they are also known.
Yes.
So they have been advised to go to a nearest health facility and be administered from there. So what I'm also saying, let's not take our old people to very ignorant, because they are not.
So what I'm asking, a specific question here is, have they received, or when are they going to start receiving information about the vaccine?
Information is ongoing.
Number one,
Like
information being that this is what the vaccine is. This is what is expected to happen. You shall receive your vaccination at this point. You shall be informed by so-and-so when to go for your vaccination. And this is how then you expect to feel after you get the injection. You know, all that information is important.
Yeah, but you see, Eric, let's go back. I did mention about community health volunteers who have been working with these old people. These are very important in a structure that we have on the ground. They're the ones who have been pushing information regarding coronavirus, the various containment measures. They have also been trained to talk to the same people. The importance about community health volunteers is that they work within their own communities. They know everyone within those communities. So let's not get them out of the picture. As we're having this conversation, let's also bring them on board.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, every sub-county, every location and sub-location has got community health volunteers. And they're the people who have been very, very instrumental in ensuring this information is passed. And they're also currently being taken through training. Yes.
We're having a conversation with Colonel Cyrus Oguna. He is the government spokesman. And what we're discussing is 1 year of COVID-19 in the country. What are the lessons to learn? And now looking into vaccination and the rollout of the vaccination campaign, what do you need to know about vaccination? Very many questions that we've seen on social media and even in the conversation that we've been having lately. And we want you now to ask direct questions to the government spokesman about COVID-19, about treatment for COVID-19, about vaccination, and what you need to know. You can call in 0719-012-600. Also, you can post your questions on our social media platforms, SpiceFM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. Let's take a break, see what's happening on the roads, and also look at the weather forecast for various towns and cities in the country and around the world. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. SpiceFM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten.
They are smart, they are funny, and unfailingly entertaining. They are the adults in the room, and they are here to help you be the best adult you can be.
Just to be very honest with each other here, not all of us are going to get tall, dark, and handsome. Not all of us are going to get 0.5s or chotaras. Some of us have to learn the short guys. Some of us have to learn those pot-belly people. Some of us have to learn older men or younger men.
Spice.
Don't ask your partner if he or she enjoyed it. I think the approach should always be, if she's enjoyed the journey, she will let you know. She'll tell you, hey, maze, your bus is big. Mi sijaipanda basi kubwa kama hii. Juu hata hii basi, hiyo mafuta tulieka yote, imetuleta hapa vizuri. Hii basi iko na nguvu. Hii basi iko na nguvu.
Spice.
Now into a relationship, it becomes like you've stopped your life, and then now me, I am your life. You see, like, what happened to your life? What happened to you? What did you used to do?
And women are guilty about that.
Is your wife listening to the show?
Whether it is matters of the heart, finances, or work that's weighing on your mind, worry not. The adults in the room will help you stay winning. The weather with Spice.
So this morning we are looking at sunny conditions in Nairobi at 21. It'll go to highs of 28 and lows of 15. It's mostly sunny in Nyeri at 19, highs of 26. Highs of 30 in Nakuru. It's going to be quite warm there today. Partly sunny conditions at the moment at 28. 20 in Eldoret right now, going to highs of 27. 25 in Kisumu will go to highs of 32. 33 the high in Kakamega today, up from 26 where it's at currently. Partly sunny conditions in Mombasa, going to highs of 32. 31 the high in Malindi, mostly sunny right now at 28. Highs of 31 in Kampala, mostly sunny right now at 26. It's already 29 degrees in Dar es Salaam and partly sunny to rise to highs of 33 today. Also sunny in Johannesburg at 18, going to highs of 27. Cloudy conditions now overtaking Lagos at 27, highs of 32. 32 also will be the high in Kinshasa. It's mostly cloudy now at 24. Experiencing rain showers in Beijing. Still, it's been raining all day. Going into early evening for them. 8 degrees now, going to highs of 12 and then lows of 6 later on. 5 degrees and thunderstorms forecasted for Paris later, going to highs of 12 and lows of 8. Mostly cloudy conditions in London at 7, highs of 10. And in New York, it's a very bright and warm morning in New York on Friday at 15. We'll see highs of 18 and lows of 2.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so we've got that whole Lunga Likoni area in the Enterprise Road. The construction is going on there, so traffic slowed down there quite a bit, trying to get in and out of the city using that option. So that's going to be that way for some time. Traffic looking much better around most parts of Nairobi. Looking out as well, it looks okay. We had some bumper-to-bumper situations around Thika Road. That's opened up some. Kiambu Road today behaved beautifully. Getting out of the city, though, coming out towards Westlands, a little bit of a hold-up outbound. But generally, done well. Congratulations this Friday. SpiceFM KE on Twitter through the day. Text through the day on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
10 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the Situation Room. With you in the room this morning is Nduoko and Eric Latif. And joining us on the line is Government Spokesman Colonel Cyrus Aguna. We are talking about COVID-19 and what you need to know about COVID-19, what you need to be reminded to do for COVID-19, and also what the government is doing, especially in the rollout for the COVID-19 vaccine. So, Colonel Aguna, there are several concerns about the vaccine itself. So in the country now we have the AstraZeneca vaccine. Just news coming out of some European countries where they have suspended use of the this particular vaccine, and then the concerns and fears come to the country on. So what happens in the case of Kenya, or what is it that you can tell people about the vaccine that is being rolled out now?
The vaccine is as far as for those that have been vaccinated, there has been no issue whatsoever. I personally have been vaccinated about 3-4 days ago, and I am okay. Right? Mm-hmm. This is a vaccine that has been gone through test by the WHO, and it has been cleared that it's good for administration on human. I mean, to human as a way of preventing severity of the coronavirus, and therefore it is something that has been cleared, and other countries are using it, and we will also continue to use it until otherwise, new information will come in.
The other countries who are using secondary and third options for vaccines, is that a plan for the government as well? Should anything go wrong, are there backups to use vaccines from other companies, other organizations as well?
There are many vaccines that are out there currently. Those that have been cleared by WHO, I think there are about 4: Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, AstraZeneca. There could be another one, but I know there are many that are still on trial. So as a country right now, we may be using AstraZeneca, but as we move forward, there's no ruling out that using other vaccines as well, as long as they've been cleared by WHO.
There was a question that somebody asked. You have already tested positive and recovered from COVID-19. Did you necessarily have to get vaccinated?
From what literature is saying, from the doctors are saying, is that somebody who is a victim of coronavirus, it may not give you the necessary protection against reinfection. Perhaps, if at all, you have to be you have to get the immunity against infection. It may not last for more than 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Since I got infected up to now, we're running into about 7-8 months, and therefore I think I'm a good candidate to be vaccinated.
So the advice to people is that even if you've tested positive, even if you had COVID, you can still get vaccinated.
You can still get, but you can still not just get vaccinated, you can still get reinfected.
Okay.
Not once, not even twice. So the only way to perhaps, and even when you get the vaccine, you may still get reinfected. But then now the beauty of having vaccine based on what is being communicated by the expert is that it reduces the severity of the infection, and I think that is a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, what's the message, even with the vaccines being here? What is very clear that Kenyans need to do? Because a lot of people, just like you've said, will take that message and run with it. That, okay, the vaccines are here, and so what it does is it provides an added layer of protection if I get it. What is still the message resoundingly coming from government?
The message is clear. Let's not throw away the containment measures out of the window, because they are the only guaranteed way to combat this virus. Vaccine being here is just an additional measure to prevent infection or to reduce infection, and when you get it, to limit the severity of the disease in you. But it is not the silver bullet. So to our people, we have seen the numbers; they're going up, and they're going up because we have, gotten to this zone that now that the vaccine is here, we can perhaps just go back to our normal ways of doing things. Do not put on, the face mask, no social distancing, no washing of hands. Everything has probably gone pretty much back to normal. But we can see now that the numbers are telling us. So the message that please let's not get back there. It is important to know that the corona is pretty much with us here. It has not gone away, and the only way to keep it aside or even to block it from getting into, from infecting us is to obey the containment measures put forward by the Minister of Health and the government as a whole.
Okay. Are we going to hear from, we're supposed to hear from the president today in terms of a curfew, I think there are many Kenyans who are hoping that this curfew will be lifted because businesses that, ply at night have really suffered for the last 1 year. What are the chances?
NAC will advise on whether the head of state will give an announcement and what he will be saying. So really it is NAC that, recommends what, needs to be said. But NAC, again, please remember, NAC is a committee that comprises many other agencies, right? So those agencies, collect data, collect information, they analyze them, they assess them, then they make a recommendation. So I do not know what they will recommend, but as and when they do recommend, then certainly, yes, it will be communicated at an appropriate time.
When you look back into the last, let's say, 6 months, and the level of enforcement of the measures that have been in place. So we still know that there's a gazette notice and there's a law that says you must wear a face mask in public, you need to wash your hands regularly, you need to maintain physical distancing, and all those are still there. But look at the enforcement, and that's the reality of our country. The people have relaxed. The enforcement agencies have as well relaxed. So what is it that then would change, even if the president were to come today and say, okay, from tomorrow we are going to increase the number of enforcement measures? What would change in terms of people and their behavior?
But let me tell you this, Eric, is that if we did not have this containment measure in place, the reality right now would be completely different.
How so?
We would be talking about maybe 10,000, of fatalities right now. So let's also give ourselves some credit that even though it might look like many Kenyans are not obeying these containment measures, but there is a section of our society that is obeying them. And because of that, we have been able to have, the kind of situation that we are currently observing, which is much, much better compared to many other jurisdictions. So let's not necessarily be too hard on ourselves. We have done extremely well as a society and as a people. Otherwise, the reality would be totally the reverse. Right? But even with that, indeed, increasingly more Kenyans are asking the same questions about, whether curfew should be lifted, all that. But I'm telling you, if that were to happen, I don't know what the head of state will decide. All right? But we must be conscious that if we are to obey these measures as have been advised by the head of state and by the Minister of Health and by all these other agencies that have been speaking on these measures, trust me, our figures will be much, much, much lower. I don't know why, many of us find it a bit difficult to put on the face mask. If it's not anything that is so heavy on your face, why it is so difficult to wash up our hands. It does not cost you much except 20 seconds of your time. I don't know why it is so difficult to obey even the social distancing. It doesn't cost you much, really. It does not even take away, it does not even demean in any way.
Sure. There are mixed reactions from Kenyans on their trust or mistrust of the government. Does the government trust Kenyans to be able to do the things that you're asking them to do?
If the government did not trust Kenyans, look at what the government has been able to do. It's because number one responsibility of any government is to protect the lives of its people. Because when you don't have people, then you don't have a government. And the government has been able to invest heavily on healthcare infrastructure in this country. In fact, I think the investment in healthcare in the last 1 year is perhaps way beyond what has been, pumped in several years in the past. Many facilities have been upgraded, many ones have been constructed, and all this is because the government is concerned about the well-being of Kenyans. Many other, provisions have been given. The government have been able to, even to give, money to people so that their well-being can be taken care of. So that is because the government cares about the people. So what you're talking about, the people are a bit skeptical about the government is saying it is not the government that people are skeptical about. What would happen is that if the government says one thing and perhaps a senior leader that people look up to does something different. So I think the bigger conversation from even media houses is why is that leader behaving that way? Yes, because then people look up to some of these leaders. And if you're preaching, water and drinking wine, then people will begin perhaps, okay, let's also drink wine then like it's drink.
Indeed. So, then coming back to the issue of the curfew, and there are very many people who have asked, so, and you've said, if the government had not put in place these measures, we'd be talking maybe a different story today. But explain to the people who just do not see the correlation between the curfew between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. and the reduction of the spread of COVID-19. Where is that connection?
Eric, and even those who are listening to us right now, is that some of these measures are put in place based on research that has been done. Sometimes not in the country, but also perhaps what has information that has come in from other jurisdictions. Because that is what being in a global environment means. It is only a wise, somebody who is not wise enough that would want to learn from himself, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others and experiences of others. So based on what information that has come in and what we have seen in the country here, is that those hours of curfew, it's when there's a lot of mingling. When we are in a social environment, entertainment environment, all these containment measures are never obeyed. And not just once in a week. It is every single day. And that would mean that even our infection rates and even fatalities, including ICU admissions, would be much, much higher. And by doing so, we also be certainly putting a lot of stress on our healthcare facilities. So what the government has put in place really is not for the benefit of the government in that sense, but for the benefit of our people, so that not many people get infected. And should you get infected, then you can get an admission space in the hospital. But otherwise, we are going to really ensure, we're going to get a situation whereby all spaces in our hospital facilities in all the counties would be completely taken up, and there'll be no place for any additional ones.
Okay. Is there going to be a shift of focus now? Before, when we're looking at maybe things like random testing to see, again, what things look like in the country, or is the focus now going to be primarily on getting as many vaccines out there now?
This thing must go hand in hand. vaccinating people and also testing, right, at the same time. So there is a whole infrastructure and elaborate mechanism on how to do that. I will not get into detail because I'm not a doctor, but I know that testing and vaccination all are going to go hand in hand.
So we want to pick some calls and questions from our audience. If you'd like to ask the government spokesman some question, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Some of the comments coming in on social media. Thomas says, even as citizens take personal responsibility regarding COVID prevention measures, the political elite need to set good examples to be emulated because they have a huge influence on their supporters, leading from the front and not vice versa. And this is something that you have also said the same, Colonel Oguna. And then,
yes.
Will the government be approving other vaccines for use here? Also, we have not heard a lot about the Kenyan variant of this virus.
Well, that's what we're saying, then, Eric, that there's so many options on the table, and this AstraZeneca was actually a donation from the World Bank, sorry, WHO.
Yep.
And as we move forward, certainly there'll be other options that we consider. I think it was even the Minister of Health who did mention that yes, we will, for as long as it's able to work for us, we will be able to bring it. So the possibility of using more than one vaccine is not necessarily, out of the interest.
Okay. And the second part of that question was whether there's a variant that is unique to Kenya. Kemri had talked about something that they had noticed around Taita Taveta.
They are testing some variants. I do not have details about that, so we did not comment so much about. But I know that they are testing some variants, and to see where the variants are more prevalent and what can be done and how it would respond to the vaccine that we have in the country. So really, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not detail so much on that.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Daniel in Kitengela is on the line. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning to everyone in the studio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, morning to Canal.
Morning to you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
First of all, I wish to appreciate you for the discussion. And I also wish to appreciate SpiceFM for that awareness that you're creating.
Okay.
However, my question to the spokesman, to the government is, sir, what are the measures that you are trying to implement, especially on the Namanga, the border at the Kenya-Tanzania border at Namanga? Because I stay in Kitengela and I've seen so many people marching in from Tanzania to Kenya even without being tested.
Okay.
And we have seen what is currently happening in Tanzania.
That's a good question.
Then finally, sir, naomba tuheshimiwa kanali, if it were possible to have a one-on-one encounter through phone, because I have some information that I find it a bit hard to communicate online. Thank you, and
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Brian in Nyeri. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Your question to Colonel Oguna?
We heard that in Dubai, this vaccine, it affects the men's reproductive system. Is it true?
That the vaccine affects the men's reproductive system?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get that answer from Colonel Oguna. So, Colonel, you can maybe start with what measures the government is putting in place in terms of cross-border monitoring.
Yes, thank you very much, William. We have been very concerned about our borders, not just one with our southern neighbor, but all our borders, east, west, north, and all the borders. And the protocols have basically been the same, that nobody will enter into our country without having taken PCR tests. That has been standard. That has not changed. Now, in regards to what he is saying, we know that there could be panya routes.
Yep.
That some of people would wish to use getting into the country because they're trying to avoid, having PCR tests taken.
Yep.
So all we have done is that we've been able to enhance our security, measures along this border by asking and by bringing both the Nyumba Kumi, structure, that nobody will come into the country without having been not noticed by any of the local people. Because if it's a foreigner coming in, you will be able to know, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who is coming through the officially, designated routes, they will have been tested and they will have been cleared to get into the country. That is the procedure. But anybody entering through these other unofficial routes, yes, the possibility that they may be avoiding to be tested, and our Nyumba Kumi in structure that is very, very effective. Most of them have been picked and have been taken back to their country to be tested there before they can come back. Yes.
All right.
So yes, we are aware about that.
Brian is asking about the effects of the vaccine on male reproduction.
Well, but you can take confidence out of the fact that this vaccine has been tried, and WHO has been able to clear it to be used. I am not a doctor really, and I keep on saying this. So, what I am giving out is information that anybody can be able to get, that is in public domain, in as far as the efficacy of this, a vaccine is concerned.
Okay.
It has been cleared, it has been tested, and there's no information as far as what he's talking about is concerned.
Okay. People who would like to get in touch with you, with your office, how can they reach you?
Of course, there are many, many ways. Social media. Okay. The government spokesperson _KE. And of course, there is also the Facebook. They can also get on Facebook.
Okay.
That is the Twitter. Then Facebook, the same. For the Twitter is for the Facebook is government spokesperson _KE.
Right.
And then there are also emails that you can be able to get me at spokes@ict.co.ke.
Okay.
And then, of course, the telephone numbers.
Asante sana, Colonel Oguna, for joining us today. We hope to host you in studio soon, and then you can bump us up the line so we can also get the vaccine.
Yes. But even before, allow me just to say this.
Yes.
You, as the media, must also call these leaders, ask them to account for what we are doing.
Right.
Because many a time the government is the one that's blamed. But then these leaders are also leaders of this country. They have got very big following.
Right.
So when you put them to task, then they'll begin to understand and appreciate the importance of what they're doing and how whatever they're doing impacts on the behavior of those around them.
Right.
So please pass that message to all of them and let them understand that coronavirus does not discriminate. A politician, a plumber, a soldier, a media person like Eric, and all of us.
That's very true.
Yes.
Right.
Message is home, Colonel. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope to host you soon.
Thank you much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Asante. So as we commemorate 1 year of COVID-19, the message is very clear, even from the government. Trust the government. It's doing everything it can to protect its people. And also that we all have a role to play in this, in stopping the spread of COVID-19. And I've got to remind all of us, when the president was easing the measures that were in place, he kept repeating this over and over and over again. He said, my fellow Kenyans, I have heard you and I'm going to ease the measures. But remember, the responsibility lies with you and I. You and I individually have got that responsibility. And if we don't do this, then we can't keep pointing fingers at the government. There's nothing like the government. It's all of us.
Everybody can do something, that's for sure.
Asante sana for tuning into the Situation Room this week. Today's proverb, when a man is stung, he does not destroy all beehives. Very, very clear and self-explanatory. Speak to you again on Monday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I wait for Monique. She'll be here at 3 with Spice Drive until 7 o'clock. And then the adults in the room will be here from 7 to 10. And then you'll have some lovely music and a new show coming up this weekend. Keep it locked on SpiceFM. Good morning.